Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May 12th Lawrence City Commission meeting. First item on the agenda are proclamations, and first up, we'd like to proclaim the month of May 2015 as Huntington's Disease Awareness Month. Do we have a representative here to speak on this topic? Hi.
Allowing me to speak today. Can you hear me okay? My name is Gwen Weens. I live at 425 Rock Vincent Place and I'm a longtime resident of Lawrence. And I volunteer and facilitate Huntington's Disease Support Group, which has been meeting for once a month for 10 years now. This is our 10-year anniversary. Some of you may not have any experience with Huntington's disease, or Huntington's chorea, as it's sometimes called. Once it was considered a rare disease, you may have heard about it through Greek ethnic. It actually is one of the more frequently encountered hereditary diseases now. It affects as many people as cystic fibrosis or ALS. Nationwide, it's estimated that 30,000 people actually have the disease, while 250,000 are at risk for the disease. That translates to approximately 600 people in Kansas with the disease more at risk. It affects women and men, all races and ethnic groups. Individuals affected like other diseases that are difficult often need extensive care from their families and loved ones, but this challenging condition has an effect on a wide circle of people for those who are ill. I first found out about Huntington's disease when I was in my early 20s, over 40 years ago. My father, who was a doctor out in Western Canada, told me about it when his older sister was diagnosed. That was a shock to our family because there was no awareness of anyone else in the family having it. Another shock when another aunt got it, right next to my aunt, and then my father got it. So we found out there was a inherited degenerative brain disease. This disease of both body and mind generally appears between 30 and 50 years of age, but it can actually go as 2 years old or as old as 90. And younger people, there's a less percent of people who are that young. It's a small percent. Each child of an HD-affected parent has a 50% chance of inheriting the disease and is said to be at risk. HD usually progresses over a 10 to 25-year period. So what are the symptoms? And they do vary in each person. I've often said it's a little like having symptoms of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even ALS, but more complicated. It can involve personality changes, depression, mood swings, perseverance, and inhibitions. Unsteady gait, involuntary movements, intoxicated appearance. Slurred speech or difficulty talking, short-term memory changes, impaired judgment, difficulty swallowing. Those are some of the symptoms. People with HD usually die from complications such as choking, heart failure, or infection. The suicide rate is slightly higher than the average norm in the U.S. So my father was diagnosed at age 52, and although he had symptoms prior to that time, that's when the actual diagnosis was made. There was no test at the time. He died of cancer at age 58. Both my aunts had it for 30 years. They were totally bedridden before they died of infections. As I said, at the time there was no genetic test. I had a 50-50 chance of getting it. If I didn't get it, then it would stop with me. And my children and my grandchildren wouldn't get it. If you don't have the abnormal gene, it does not skip generations. Well, there is no cure yet. There is extensive and cutting-edge research going on with HD, and it has been for a long time. In fact, HD research has served as a prototype for all kinds of genetic and neurological disorders. It had a significant influence on the Genome Project. It was like a miracle to me when the gene was discovered in 1993, along with then having a blood test to find out whether I had the disease or not. It's a huge decision to decide if they tested for something that does not have a cure. Some people do not want to be tested. I decided I did. I was extremely fortunate that I had the test and it was negative. However, I had two sisters in the Lawrence community with Huntington's disease, and I helped take care of them. Both of them were very active here, and they worked as long as they could, and I'm just so proud of the courage that they showed. People knew them. My sister Jan Means, she went to the Art Center, the developmentally challenged folks for a long time, and my sister Cindy worked in the school system as a substitute teacher and a para. Now, I have a brother too, who's in his 50s, and he was recently tested and does not have the abnormality. I continue to have cousins with the disease and a nephew and niece at risk. There are more drugs now that can sometimes help with symptoms. The research continues with more collaboration than ever before. The resources here in the community that I'm very thankful for are the Lawrence Huntington's Disease Support Group at Lawrence Memorial Hospital. It meets on the third Tuesday of each month at 7 p.m. and is sponsored by the Hereditary Neurological Disease Center. This is our 10-year anniversary, and we have usually between 10 and 20 people attend. People come from all over. We have people here in Lawrence that come, of course, with Eudora, Baldwin, Topeka, Kansas City. We are the only support group in this part of Kansas. In fact, some people come from western Kansas just to come to a support group. And so they'll come, get information, and they can't usually come back at all if they're 6 or 7 hours away. The Hereditary Neurological Disease Center is a non-profit program that specializes in Huntington's disease, providing diagnostic and disease management using a comprehensive multidisciplinary approach. We're located in Wichita, Kansas, and provide consultation, educational programs, and support services throughout Kansas and the Midwest. They are one of the top research sites in the United States and the top research sites in the world for one study. The center has saved my life more than once. It's a nonprofit. People can go there. You don't have insurance. You can go for a clinic, which is once a month. You get to see a physical therapist, speech therapist, a whole team of people. And they see how you're doing with the disease if you have it. If you're at risk, you get all kinds of information. It's an amazing place, and then all this research is going on. They are very attentive to people, and I can call there and talk to someone and get information if I was really not sure what to do next. I want to thank the community of Lawrence. It's also been here for our family. Lawrence Memorial Hospital provides a room for our monthly support group and has for the last 10 years. Our support group information is noted in the date book of Journal World, and there have been past articles about pursuing and encourage both families dealing with Huntington's disease. Different agencies responded to caring needs as they were able. There were more funds, and a few years back, than there are right now, research programs to help you in care and care for people without diseases like this. The community has been supportive of past fundraising events. And I feel really grateful to live in Lawrence and in such a responsive community. We currently have Pigs with a Purpose as an ongoing fundraising project right now for the clinics at Huntington's Disease Services. Here's one of the pigs. They come in pink, white, blue, and green. And what they do is they put change in them, and then they, when it gets filled up, they write a check to the neurological center. Now, I know this is not like the Ice Bucket Challenge. But we did have one person make $1,000 just by kissing the pig once when this was going on, and there was a walk after too. But it's for a good purpose, and it does also help other diseases. So I just wanted to share this information with you, and I thank you for listening to me.
Gwen, thank you. And for your family, your dad and two sisters that have fought so bravely with this disease, thank you for being an advocate for them and for your family and for all you do for our community. Thank you. Whereas Huntington's disease is an inherited degenerative brain disorder that affects over 30,000 Americans with 200,000 more at risk and currently has no effective treatment or cure. And whereas since the discovery of the gene that causes Huntington's disease in 1993, the pace of Huntington's disease research has accelerated and has served as a prototype for other neurological and genetic research. And whereas the Huntington's Disease Society of America, the Hereditary Disease Foundation, CHDI, and the Huntington Study Group are national research organizations dedicated to finding a cure for the disease. And whereas the Hereditary Neurological Disease Center is conducting important research and providing evaluations, education, and multidisciplinary services, and sponsors a Lawrence Huntington's Disease Support Group that is celebrating 10 years of service. Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Lawrence, Kansas does hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 to be Huntington's Disease Awareness Month, and urge citizens of this community to participate in events to increase their awareness about Huntington's disease. Thank you. Okay. Next up on the agenda is to proclaim the month of May 2015 as Mental Health Month. Hi.
Hi there. I'm here representing Dave Johnson. He's out of town. He said he apologized he couldn't be here as CEO for the Burton Nash Center. My name is Cindy Hart, and I am the Community Development Director there. And we just wanted to take the time to say thank you to the commissioners, Mayor, for your support in mental health and understanding that mental health is fundamental to overall physical health as well, and the support the community provides. The Burton Nash Center is celebrating our 65th year this year in 2015. Providing services to those in Douglas County, about 5,000 folks each year. So it's 1 in 4 of us in any given year that suffers from some type of mental health problem. So just here to say thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Thanks for all the good work that you and the staff do at Burton Nash. You guys are hugely, obviously underfunded, thanks to our state, and we want to do whatever we can to help you guys out. So thank you. Whereas the U.S. Surgeon General states that mental health is fundamental to health, personal well-being, family, and interpersonal relationships, and contributes to community and society. And whereas mental illness affects 1 in 4 Americans every year, regardless of age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or economic status. And whereas the U.S. Surgeon General has found that a range of treatments exist for most mental disorders, and the efficacy of mental health treatments are well documented. And whereas Lawrence, Kansas has made a commitment to community-based systems of mental health care for all residents. And whereas the guiding principles of community mental health care have always been comprehensiveness, cost efficiency, effective management, and high quality and consumer responsive services. And whereas Mental Health America, the National Council for Community Behavioral Health Care, and the Burton Nash Community Mental Health Center observe Mental Health Month every May to raise awareness and understanding of mental health and illness. Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Lawrence, Kansas does hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 as Mental Health Month in the City of Lawrence, and call upon all citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of mental illness and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all people with mental illness. Thank you. Last but certainly not least is to proclaim the month of May 2015 as Bike Month, and the week of May 11th to 15th, 2015 as Bike to Work Week. Hi again, Lisa.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hallberg. I am the Lawrence Douglas County Bicycle Advisory Committee Chair, and I live here in Lawrence, of course. And I want to thank you all very much for riding with us today. We had a really nice ride. It's such a gorgeous day out there. And it was just perfect. Our 3rd annual bike ride with commissioners. So I just want to mention briefly that I really appreciate being able to serve on the Bicycle Advisory Committee and talk a little bit about all the work that we're doing to help make the city a better place for cycling, particularly that we've been working with Public Works and city planning, city and county planning to improve transportation, make the facilities safer and available for all users, both drivers and cyclists, and to take advantage of planned infrastructure upgrades to improve the bike lane network in the city of Lawrence. It just keeps improving every year. Lawrence is a bronze level bicycle friendly community as designated by the League of American Cyclists. And we are working to continue that level, hopefully improve part of that. Improving that level and improving cycling in Lawrence includes working with Parks and Rec and the Douglas County Health Foundation to train. We will be training this upcoming month of June 16 league certified instructors. And the whole idea of the league certified instructor is to teach a certified course, certified curriculum to help cyclists be safer cyclists, so that we can have cyclists of all ages feel comfortable cycling. The more cyclists we have, the safer the streets are for everybody. We want more people to feel comfortable out there and feel safe riding in the city. We have continued 4 years of bike counts. We continue to maintain about a level of 2% ridership. We'd like to see that improve. And in addition to the great bike shops in the city, Sunflower and CycleWorks and the Recyclery, there is work on creating a not-for-profit bike shop, Lawrence Unchained, which will help recycle bicycles and get them to people who need them. And again, to get more people involved in cycling, to learn about how to fix their own bikes, and to get as many people out there comfortable, happily cycling as we can. And I really appreciate the opportunity to ride with you all today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lisa. It was a fun ride today. Riding the new Sandra Shaw Trail outside for a better insight. And we want to thank again John McGrew for his work and Bert Nash and also the Sunflower Foundation for their contributions, and ultimately the Bicycle Advisory Committee too for all of your guys' hard work in making that happen. We're close to getting the loop done, as you mentioned. It's really exciting. So please extend our thanks to all the folks that work so hard on this, and we'll keep making progress on it. This is a proclamation whereas for more than a century, the bicycle has been an important part of the lives of most Americans, and the bicycle is a viable and environmentally sound form of transportation and an excellent form of recreation. And whereas Lawrencians will experience the joys of bicycling through educational programs, races, commuting events, helmet promotion, or just getting out and going for a ride. And whereas Lawrence, Kansas has been named a bronze-level bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists, and creating bicycle-friendly communities has been shown to improve citizens' health, well-being, and quality of life, to boost community spirit, to improve traffic safety, and to reduce pollution and congestion. And whereas the education of cyclists and motorists as to the proper and safe operation of bicycles and motor vehicles is important to ensure the safety and comfort of all users. And whereas the League of American Bicyclists and independent cyclists throughout our state are promoting greater public awareness of bicycle operation and safety education in an effort to reduce accidents, injuries, and fatalities. Now therefore, let it be resolved, the City of Lawrence, Kansas does hereby proclaim the month of May 2015 to be Bicycle Month, and the week of May 11th to 15th, 2015 as Bike to Work Week in the City of Lawrence. Congratulations. All right. Now we move on to the consent agenda, and all matters listed on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Is there an item on the consent agenda that a member of the commission would like to have removed for separate consideration?
Is this where I remove one of the claims now?
Just probably the claims as a whole.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Do you want the claims removed?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other items a member of the commission wants removed? Okay. Is there an item on the consent agenda that a member of the public would like to have removed for separate consideration? Yes, ma'am?
Yes, the item, I did not hear the previous one was.
Number 10, okay. Any other item that a member of the public would like to have removed on the consent agenda? All right. So with the exception of the claims, item number 2 and item number 10, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Bully, seconded by Commissioner Amix. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Item number 2, the claims. Commissioner, or Vice Mayor Soden.
I was looking through it, and we're just learning what we're doing. So I'm not saying we shouldn't pay this, but Chuck, you should probably go to the microphone. I have some questions for you, Chuck. These are easy questions, though. Sorry, Chuck. So I was scrolling through them, and I saw that our Westar bill was $250,000 or something like that, and that popped out, because it's 6 digits. And so I was looking through here at the electrical service charges and stuff, and it started getting me thinking, do we have any solar panels on any of our facilities or anything at all?
I'm not aware of any, looking around for, you guys don't have any, no? Not yet. We have one light out here that
Yeah.
we do have on solar, but nothing else as far as I am aware of.
Do we have anything in the works or anything to look at?
We looked at them when we did Venture Park. We had a whole, in fact, Eileen had a grant from the EPA. They looked at wind, solar, geothermal, and nothing panned out there to be financially feasible. We are looking at it with the 23rd Street lighting project. The bids didn't come back so well. We're evaluating whether we want to bring that back at all to the commission. But we do evaluate it. We just haven't been successful in finding anything that we can set up and start doing some of that stuff.
I kind of wondered, when you were looking at the pricing, was buying in bulk helping at all with the pricing, or was it the
Well, for like the
labor, or-
23rd Street lights, the problem is the lighting isn't, I guess, as powerful as what we're wanting for street lighting, the watts. And the costs are significant. They just haven't come down to meet, conventional or standard construction or lighting at this time.
Have you looked at rooftop panels for any of the
We have
buildings?
not.
Well, that's something I want to work on somehow.
Okay.
So you point me to the right person.
That'd
Maybe
probably
we
be
check
us
it out.
with facilities.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
It wasn't easy.
I have a lot of faith in you. Yeah.
There are some innovative features, Vice Mayor, with the Santa Fe Station project.
Oh,
Including a
nice.
geothermal well that's planned for that facility, so.
Okay. Well, we talk about that. I was just scrolling through and just like, hey, let's look at that. Thank you.
Any public comment on this item? On the claims? All right, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve 204 claims in the amount of $2,192,209.51 to 204 vendors.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the claims by Vice Mayor Soden, seconded by Commissioner Amix. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next item pulled off consent is item number 10. Yeah, go ahead. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Seal King with the League of Women Voters, and we had written a letter to you this morning, and we'd also written a letter to the Planning Commission when this item came up. And we are concerned about the whole planning issue and planning standards. And we find that this particular development, when it is not a planned development, that all the interior streets, and if you have a site plan for that development, you see that it's quite extensive street within the development. It's all considered as a driveway, private driveway at this point. If it were a planned development, it could be labeled as and built as a private street, which would mean that if the property owners within the area cannot maintain that street, that there are some recourses to go to the city to ask for districts and help, which currently aren't available to that community. So we ask that this is denied and it's sent back to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission asks for a plan development zoning or overlay over this district so that the citizens who are buying the what are called townhouses within this property have some recourse at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. King. Any other public comments on item number 10 on the consent agenda? And that item is to approve an SUP for Lakeview Villas at Albemarle. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Lance Johnson with the Johnson Group. I represent the applicant and I'm working with the bank to develop this phase 2. Clearly, there's a lot of details and probably overview about the project that I won't go into, but what I do think is germane, and I said it at the Planning Commission, that if we were starting from scratch and going out there, Ms. King may be making some valid points. I don't know. But we're dealing with a development out there that there are originally is planned for 104 units, all of them condos, in a 4-plex structure. We're proposing, not deviating from a condo type development. We're just changing, instead of 4-plexes, we're going to kind of a single structure and a duplex structure, still under a condo format. There is an HOA in place, covenants and restrictions in place, and there are 44 homeowners out there right now that are dues-paying homeowners. If we're to go out there and change the structure, that opens a whole can of worms, and it probably is very challenging with the existing HOA, and I don't even know if it's doable. So I guess the reality is, if I'm not standing here right now, we can go pull a building permit and go build 4-plexes under the condo structure. We're just coming forward with a plan that we think speaks to the market, that there's a desire, demand for that not single family, but the single unit structure as well as duplex. And that's what this development does. It decreases it by about 20 units, takes it down to 84. So I just wanted to make you aware that really what's in place and maybe the summary of what we're proposing. And I'm be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Johnson?
Can you explain the driveway street issue from your point of view?
Yeah, it is private. It is a private street. And under the condo, basically under a private or a condo situation, you've got to have access to a public street, which it does get access to Lakeview. So it is private on the interior. Now, at a future date, I know it was brought up again at the Planning Commission that if this development at some point wanted to improve that, they could come back and petition the city if they wanted to do a benefit district or something, but that's at a later date. But it is a private street.
Question to staff, if I could. Scott, or anyone. Mr. Johnson, right under the 2006 site plan, he could pull building permits and go ahead and build under what was under the approved site plan that exists today?
Correct. We've got zoning entitlements out there for the full development under a certain structure type, the 4-plex structure type. In fact, there are several of them built, occupied, in an operating neighborhood. This exercise essentially just changes the type of structures on what will be maintained as the road system and most of the parking. So he can the option is to either kind of work through that existing plan on file that may or may not speak to the market today, or change the structure types and try to address the market.
Okay, so we have a situation under the revised site plan that's been brought forward, as he said, going from 104 units to 84 units. It's got to have some effect on the return that, on whatever that investment investment is, which has got to be fairly big. Under the 2006 site plan, is that a private road or a private street also?
It was approved as an access way or an interior drive similar to other types of multifamily residential development.
So it has not changed under either,
No, there's
under either
no,
site plan?
correct. There's no changes to that access drive, curb lines, any of that structure.
So then the opportunity here is to, shrink the number of units, maybe have a more saleable unit that may be more market friendly, and our density again goes down. Okay. Seems reasonable to me.
Any other questions of staff?
Yeah, I do one more. And this is a question that has to do under Mr. Johnson's or the ownership's group HOA. If, let's say that dissolves or something happens there, we do have other developments around town where a street's gone bad on a private street. And how do we deal with that?
There, yeah.
Old Chuck.
Good. Chuck probably answered mostly from a planning standpoint. I think we're probably in agreement. There are different options to develop a parcel like this. If public streets, platted with right-of-way is one option, and then the city maintains it after the development group builds it. Or what's typical in apartment complexes, they're all just private driveways, drive aisles, reaching parking lots. And those are all to be maintained by the owner, and we have enforcement mechanisms to go out and require them to repair potholes and striping and signs and that sort of thing. And then there are some developments that have more true private streets where it looks and feels like a street, but the setbacks are closer for the development, and it's privately maintained. And it's in those instances where the HOA or the owners as a group don't have the funds, don't save back the funds to maintain those, where we get involved, and then Chuck's department handles most of those requests.
Yeah, and it's similar to the benefit district we just did for Mesa Way as a private street. They do have some, it's not HOAs because they're businesses, but they do have some organizations there. One organization has gone ahead and accumulated some funds, but again, whether they have the skills or the knowledge or the experience on how to manage a road project or road repair project, they come to us, they ask if we can help, and we try to help. I mean, there's several of them that we've done. We've done Williamsburg Court. We've worked with some people on Crestview. We've got another one pending. We've done several, so it's not uncommon. We do try to help. All the costs are on them, and they all understand that when it comes to that point.
Okay, so is it safer to say than the language that we have on the development that we have before us, we have enforcement that we can take just because of the site plan and
Correct. Yeah.
the performance agreements has to happen there. What I'm looking at then, I guess, is probably the private street that maybe we don't have everything that we need to force the issue for repair, right? So is that the way I understand it?
Well, we don't, other than, when people call and they complain about it, typically when the neighbors are involved in a situation like that, they want their streets to be maintained. A lot of them do their own snow plowing. We get calls, can you come plow our snow? Because the streets aren't built sometimes to city standards, we hesitate because our equipment can tear some of that stuff up. If we can help, we try to help. We do provide services. We have water. We got water meter people going out there. We got trash being picked up. So they got to meet some minimum standard. Otherwise, just our own equipment will rough them up.
So back to the item that's on the agenda tonight, I believe that the safeguards are there to take care of problems that may exist on that interior roadway. And through our performance agreement, we have the standards in place to force those improvements to be made.
Yes.
Okay. And I do like the idea of the density change also.
I do have one question for you. I'm looking at the letter that was sent by the League of Women Voters on April 19th. I'm imagining this is the one that went to the Planning Commission. If I could just have you kind of verify the validity of a statement that's made in here. They say, when a similar situation happened to Williamsburg Place and Normandy Court in 2007, the City Commission initially refused to allow Benefit District to repair. Goes on to say the commission ultimately waived the original denial and allowed a benefit district, but reluctantly with the vow not to allow this again. Have we done anything post 2007 in terms of?
Yeah, we just did Mesa Way just a couple weeks ago.
Okay, so that's not an accurate statement then.
No, and I don't remember us denying it. You know, obviously when they start with these benefit districts and private developments, Mesa Way, I just said we need 100%, and everybody signed on. I think on Williamsburg, everybody knew they needed things done, but I don't know that everybody wanted to pay for it.
Right.
I don't remember if we had 100%, but we had enough to make the benefit district. We haven't had any issues collecting, so they're all paying for that. And we've done some since I can't recall them off the top of my head.
Okay, so that you would say that is not an accurate statement.
I don't remember if the commission approved it or didn't approve it at first, but I know we have continued to do that.
I can find out, but I can't remember that.
Yeah, I don't remember us ever turning somebody down that wanted to pay for something and just used us as a mechanism to get that done. We're always trying to help.
Okay, thanks.
I won't say that we didn't say no in the beginning, but then a petition may have come forward or whatever may have happened, and we reconsidered or something, but yeah, that's 8 years ago. I can't remember that. Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Entertain a motion either way.
The item that is before us is to approve the SUP.
That's correct.
Mayor, I would make a motion to approve the special use permit SUP 15-00065 for Lakeview Villas at Albemarle. And adopt on first reading ordinance number 9109 for the SUP.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, motion made and seconded to approve the SUP and ordinance 9109 by Commissioner Amix, seconded by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion passes 4-1 with Vice Mayor Amix and Vice Mayor Soden in dissension. All right, City Manager's report.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Just two quick items for you this evening. You'll see the rental licensing and inspection program report here from January of 2015 onward. And then we also just wanted to update you and the public about future plans to signalize 6th and Champion Lane. And you see a schedule there that we'll be going through some additional process in order to establish a benefit district to fund the remainder of the cost, with the majority of the cost coming from a city KDOT turnback agreement that has been worked out with them. Be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, sir.
Diane, wasn't, maybe I'm wrong on this one, any of the TDD money from that development go into this improvement?
I think that it was mainly for interior improvements. I don't know if Chuck remembers any of that right
Or was it
offhand.
just the right turn in and out, or the right turn lane, or whatever it was?
We also built the benefit district.
Okay.
The TDD wasn't made internal.
I think it was primarily the internal improvements there,
Okay.
but I can certainly check on that for you, Commissioner.
Okay.
Any other questions for Diane? All right, Diane, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we will take public comment of a general nature, and just as a reminder, we're going to ask you to speak to any issues or items that are not scheduled on the agenda, and we'll invite that at this time. We've got a lot of people who want to speak tonight. We don't have a shot clock, obviously, but please try to keep your comments brief so that everyone can have a chance to talk and we don't get out of here at midnight, okay? So general public comment at this time.
Mayor Farmer, Commissioners. Excuse me. My name is Michael Allman, and I'm bringing this issue forward from the Sustainability Action Network. Our mission has to do with ecological and energy sustainability, and that's basically what is that maximum, Chuck? This has to do with ecological sustainability in the city of Lawrence. Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, once again, what advances the slide? I meant not to take time.
That's all right. It's right here. Yeah, you can do that. Just scroll down.
There, okay.
You can scroll.
Okay, great, thank you. Sorry about that. This is an issue that is pretty much under the radar of most people unless you're an environmentalist or involved in native plants, things of that sort. I do know that it is on the radar with some people in Parks and Recreation Department, but so far they have not had the wherewithal to deal with this issue. But that's why we're bringing it forward for the Parks and Recreation to consider this issue in the near future, hopefully. Amur honeysuckle. Lonicera maaki, it's from Asia, from eastern China, the Amur region of China. It's a invasive shrub in the eastern and central USA, and it's actually rampant here in Lawrence. You can see the range in that map on the left. This is some of the states that already have banned that plant. And so why is it so invasive? Well, it chokes other plants, basically. It leaves out much earlier in spring than most plants do, gets a head start. It blooms much earlier. It grows very rapidly. The spring growth this year is like 3 or 4 foot stems within a month. It produces at least 1 million berries on a mature shrub per year. Those berries stay on the bush all winter and are spread by the birds to propagate the plant everywhere. There's also some notes in the literature that it has root toxins that inhibit nearby plants. It grows 15 to 20 feet tall. That one's actually not as big as some of them can get. It also, like I said, chokes out other plants. It forms extremely thick thickets, groves. All the other undergrowth within that woodland has been repressed. So in Lawrence, how big a problem is it? Well, I've been researching this for several months, and it is in virtually every neighborhood. The largest stands that I've seen are in some of the first tier, the older affluent neighborhoods like Sunset Hills and Deerfield, Old West Lawrence, that I'm assuming they were planted intentionally as an exotic ornamental. So they had the money to do the landscaping, that's my guess. Also, many residential streets have it. It's in every city park, I think. I haven't been to every one, but every one that I've been to, I've seen it, except the most formal ones like Watkins Park or South Park. It seems to have been planted once again as an ornamental in our flagship parks, Holcomb, Clinton, Centennial. Unfortunately, it is extensive in the, quote, nature parks, which are supposed to be all natural. And this is an unnatural invasive plant from across the world. All these parks, fortunately at this point, I haven't seen it. I don't know if it's true, but I have not seen it at Rock Chalk Park. I have seen it at the Lawrence Nature Park, which is just a few years old. It is an easement from the Kansas Land Trust. And the plants there are very few, and they're not big, and they're not setting berries yet. So that park can be saved. At least one local nursery is still selling it. So here are a few pictures. We'll go fast through this. These are some street right-of-ways where I photographed it. This is just touching the tip of the iceberg. Some of the parks, Holcomb, Clinton Park, Centennial Park. If you look closely, these are the white flowers. That's, if you can see that in any of these images, that'll be your indicator that this is Amur honeysuckle. Parks and Recreation could identify it. I'm sure they have. We pointed it out several places. It's within a stone's throw of the Prairie Park Nature Center, this plant right here. It's in the Naismith Valley Park, all up and down the trail. It's in the Brook Creek Woods, all around the whole woods. Burroughs Creek Park and Trail, all along the trail there. It's in DeVictor Park, both on the nature trail and the concrete trail. Martin Park, right at the entry, as well as in the interior, all along the Selchie Trail. And it's even at the Parks Maintenance Facility at 19th and Moody, which doesn't surprise me really, but there it is again with those white flowers. It's pretty much everywhere. What Sustainability Action is recommending that Lawrence do is declare an ecological emergency and designate Amur honeysuckle as a noxious weed for eradication, as has been done in some states and many communities. Charge Parks and Recreation to eradicate it by uprooting or cutting it and putting stump herbicide on a 3-year schedule. All the nature parks in year 1 using trained volunteers. Year 2, all the formal parks, the flagship parks and the streets rights away. And then year 3, anything that remains, monitor it and maintain and continue that until it can be at least under manageable control. We would suggest hiring at least 2 program managers and 5 forestry laborers for the 3 years of the program. Get the public involved, pass an ordinance requiring it to be removed from private property, and then fines will kick in if they don't, and coordinate with Douglas County and KU. I have not checked KU properties. I'm sure it's extensive there. Douglas County likewise. If Lawrence does decide to do this, and these other institutions don't, and the private properties don't, it'll be back in full force within 10 years again. So it must be coordinated if it's going to be done at all. What we're suggesting for an annual budget for 3 years, I would hope that Parks and Recreation, I'm sure they would be happy to check the numbers. This is for our best knowledge of what labor and plants cost. The 5,000 replacement shrubs, for example, we're suggesting offer to private property owners to replace the plants that we're requiring them to take out. That's why that line item is there. Crew truck, computer, miscellaneous. Miscellaneous would cover training for the volunteers, equipment, gloves, reflective vests, whatever, things of that sort. Year 3, the figure is lower. The number of plants to replace is less. I don't know if that's an adequate number of plants required. It doesn't seem like the city would need to replace any of the plants they would take out along street right away, for example. We were thinking that these plants would be as a incentive for the private property owners. So that's basically what we're thinking would work to get this in control. It is, if it's not handled on a continuous basis for at least 3 years to get to that point, like I said, it'll come back again. And if it's not done soon, the plants that are already out there are quite a few big ones, but most of them are medium size, as tall as me or shorter. They are putting on berries. They're easily removed, but soon they will be mature. They grow very rapidly. So if Lawrence wants to do this, it's something that should be taken on fairly soon and aggressively. So that's basically what we're proposing for the city to consider. So thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Michael? Okay. Michael, thank you.
Thank you too.
Any other general public comment? Good evening.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, new commissioners, upgraded staff. It's nice to see you at the front. Casey. I am Melinda Henderson. I live in Brook Creek neighborhood, and this is my first meeting since the new commission has been installed. So congratulations to everyone up there. So I've been paying attention to the meetings since you all became the new commission, and I've heard some comments that got me thinking that I wanted to kind of address tonight and flesh out. I know you guys are working on your goal setting sessions and budget hearings. And I have some goals for you all too. I know 3 of you knocked on a lot of doors. My door wasn't knocked on. I spoke with some of you, but I do have some things that I would like for you to consider as you're working, towards setting your goals this year. Primarily, I would like to see increased participation on social media as much as possible, especially Facebook. I know that we have Lawrence Listens, and I want to commend Meg on that. That's great. Right now, that looks like it's kind of it's not a open forum. It looks like it's the city asks questions, people will respond. I don't see it as a continuing conversation. Do I have that right? Okay. So, I think that's a great start to get information from the public. Mayor Farmer started doing a lot with social media last year and set the bar pretty high, which I like. I appreciate his blog, his weekly updates, and always posting on his Facebook page asking for feedback. Commissioner Herbert has picked that up, and honestly, I think he might be giving the City of Lawrence Facebook page a run for its money as far as keeping everyone updated with what's going on. And he's always asking for input too, and I really appreciate that. And it's nice. It's nice to have a conversation going and getting comments from other people because it's just gives you like more ideas to consider and things. So I'm just throwing this out there. I know everybody isn't, on the same page as far as skill set goes, but one thing that Commissioner Amick said when you all were talking about the Justice Matters meeting, you said, I'm a commissioner first and foremost, 24/7. And I appreciate that. That's a great, I like that you think of yourself that way. And so if you have any free time, over the next year and you want to increase your participation, I would encourage it. And I know that Commissioner Bowley's been doing some classes and stuff too, which I think is great. So, yeah. It's just, and come jump in some of the other conversations too. It's a 21st century, and I think we're really doing a good job moving forward with technology, with the city. I want to see my commission participate too. So that's one of my goals for you all. Secondly, and this kind of goes back to the 24/7 thing, whenever there are public meetings that ask for public input, I would hope that all 5 commissioners would be able to attend the meeting because we come down to me, it's like an extension of a city commission meeting. And we come down, participate, try to give you our input. For me, it's important to hear what you all think too. And I know that a lot of doors were knocked on during the campaign. Mine wasn't. So I don't want any of you to think that you know what the city wants, just because you got elected. So I really do hope that everyone can make it to meetings where you're asking for public input and it's not something that would violate COMA. So that's all I have for you guys tonight. Thank you very much. I appreciate all the work you guys are working on.
Thank you, Melinda. Any other general public comment? All right. We will move on to the regular agenda. And again, I know a lot of you want to speak tonight to, especially to this first issue. If you would, please try to keep your comments brief. That way everyone can have an opportunity to speak. That would be most appreciated. First item on the agenda is to receive a report from Public Works regarding 27th Street traffic calming. Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Farmer, Commissioners. Mark Teal with the City of Public Works Department. Just situated here. You have to excuse me, I have some notes tonight because I want to make sure that I cover all of the items that I think are important that you all hear and consider talking about this important issue for traffic calming on 27th Street. First of all, with a little bit of history, 27th Street from Louisiana to Iowa is listed as a major collector. It's approximately a mile in length. It's 2-lane street, 27 feet wide. It has varying curvature and elevation changes. It's also listed as a bike route. In December of 2012, the Traffic Safety Commission recommended traffic calming for this section of 27th Street. And in January of 2013, you all, or a seated commission, approved an unfunded traffic calming for 27th Street. It was placed on the list, and as it sits there today, it's currently on the top of the list, but remains unfunded. In 2012, traffic counts showed the average speed in that area to be 38.1 miles an hour, with the daily traffic volumes of 3,315 vehicles. And most recently from April 30th to May 5th of this year, traffic counts were retaken with an average speed of 34.6 miles and an average daily traffic volume of 9,450 vehicles. Some of the impacting issues in this area were the construction of the 23rd and Iowa intersection, the SLT construction, and the reconstruction of 31st Street, ultimately the closure of that street while that's under construction. Both of these projects have led to increased traffic on 27th Street. Although 27th Street was not listed as a detour by any of those projects, people figured that out, that it was a way to get through and around the construction, so it's been used that way. We're also anticipating that once 31st Street reopens, that some of that traffic will go back to 31st Street and not take 27th Street any longer. In order to know for sure, we'll have to wait till that happens and redo the traffic counts, which is something that we had agreed to in a meeting we had with the Indian Hills Neighborhood Association a few weeks ago. I think one of the things too to note about the construction, the 2012-2013 approval for traffic calming was done prior to any of these projects. So there was traffic calming in the works and on the list prior to the project's impact, the additional impact to that street with the projects that I just mentioned. So what's been done for traffic calming in the area since the project started, the SLT and 31st Street and 23rd and Iowa project? A four-way stop was added to the intersection of 27th and Louisiana. A sidewalk was constructed on the north side of 27th from Belhaven to Louisiana. And then as part of a 2000 traffic study done on Louisiana Street, some traffic calming devices were added along Louisiana Street, not part of the approved plan in 2013, but an earlier traffic calming study that was done. Wanted to mention that. We had, like I said, mentioned earlier, April 22nd, we met with the Indian Hills Neighborhood Association. There was approximately 70 residents present. What we did out of that meeting, outcomes from that meeting, is we agreed to ask KDOT to remove a posted detour for Steve's Place that was actually shown on 27th Street. That was taken down the very next day. We agreed to have traffic counts redone, and then again, when 31st Street reopens, the first part of that was completed. We agreed to change the timing, the school beacon, 27th and Bellhaven, that was done immediately. And the police department continues to do ongoing patrols in the area to monitor compliance with traffic regulations and laws. Some of the current traffic calming options that are in the memo tonight that we've prepared for you to look at are traffic circles, speed cushions, and raised crosswalks. I want to just take a quick minute to show you what some of those examples are. Kind of just real briefly explain that. I'm going to jump down past this intersection. This is a traffic circle. I've received a few emails and some calls this past week after this item was posted. And there's some confusion, I think, out there between a roundabout and a traffic circle. We're not suggesting a roundabout. These are in place in town at various locations already. They fit within the context of the existing intersection. They're used to make vehicles slow down and actually navigate around. In the orange there you see is actually I think it's about a 3-inch elevated curb, so trucks and fire trucks and ambulances, large vehicles can maneuver around that without actually jumping up on a traditional curb. There's a picture in here that David Woosley, who's here tonight as well, there's a picture of one. I'm not sure, that's 8th and Michigan Street. So they work fairly well as traffic calming measure. The next thing that we are suggesting is a speed cushion. There's speed humps and speed cushions. We don't recommend speed humps on collectors or arterials. So the difference between them is basically a speed cushion has a depressed area on both sides of the street to allow fire trucks. And this was a request when the city of Lawrence was developing these plans, not this specific plan, but traffic calming in general. It was a request from the fire medical department that we have this item as well as an option in the inventory to allow for fire trucks to navigate these without having any issues. They're, I think, David, 8 foot, David's back there, 8 feet wide. I think the distance between the depressions is 8 feet, so typically a normal vehicle would not be able to drive down the center of the road and avoid the speed cushion, but most cases a vehicle would have to slow down and navigate that. And then a raised crosswalk. An example of that would be similar to what's at the Arts Center on New Hampshire Street. That's a raised crosswalk with a hawk signal.
Mark, would it be similar to what's on, is it 15th Street there at Burroughs?
It is, and that's probably a better example because that's a trail connector, the Burroughs Creek Trail that allows you to cross 15th Street with an elevated crosswalk. And then there's one on 19th Street with a hawk signal. It's not elevated, it's not a raised crosswalk on 19th Street, but it has a hawk signal there.
Okay.
So it's kind of a combination of both between 15th and 19th Street. I wanted to walk you through some of the options that you have. I think the first thing to note with the options, there's a lot of options on here, and the key to traffic calming is to find the right options in the right sequence. Too much traffic calming is bad. Too little traffic calming is also bad. So we really got a lot of work to do to make sure we get that right combination there. And in some cases, it's okay to do a little bit now and a little bit later as we do it instead of adding everything all at once and creating a more confusing situation. So the first device that we've recommended is a speed cushion on 27th between Louisiana and Bellhaven. That is this location here. That would be just east of the existing crosswalk, which is in place with a school beacon for school children to cross from the north side of 27th to the south side, headed east towards Broken Arrow Elementary School and to the middle school. And there is a pedestrian tunnel that goes under Louisiana Street. The next device is another speed cushion on 27th Street between Bellhaven and Alabama. That's at this location here, just east of Alabama. Then a traffic circle at Alabama. An example of that is one that I just showed you. And then a speed cushion between Alabama and Missouri. That would be just before you get to Naismith Valley Park. Am I the wrong one? This one. Okay, I'm sorry. This is Alabama one's here. There's the traffic circle at Alabama. It's hard to see that big map up there. And then here is the one that I just talked about, the speed cushion. And then we talked about either a circle or a traffic apron. I want to go back real quick to show you what the apron was. An example of that. That was in the first part of these pictures. There's two ways to get at that. Missouri has a rather unique alignment. It's not quite a 90-degree alignment. It's also not an offset alignment. So it creates quite a bit of current existing radius for vehicles, for trucks to be able to make those turns and not drive on the curb. The orange indicated here is one example of a solution to narrow down the radiuses, but allow for trucks to be able to navigate those radiuses. That would be a similar raised apron as I described for a traffic circle. Another option would be to actually change the alignment of Missouri where it meets 27th and then put a speed cushion in between the two streets. Then we get down to Naismith Valley Park. There's an existing crosswalk there for the trail that runs through Naismith Valley Park. There's two options there. One would be a raised crosswalk. One would be a pedestrian refuse island, similar to some of the traffic calming that I just mentioned we put on Louisiana Street. Another option would be to do a raised crosswalk and or a hawk signal, or both. Then moving further to the west, another speed cushion. And then finally at Ridge Court, a traffic circle. Also well, it is shown on the map here. The dotted red line here is currently programmed sidewalk in our sidewalk gap program this year. We're also recommending, there's an additional gap that continues on to the east to Bellhaven along the north side of 27th. We would recommend that gap be completed as well. Then I want to kind of talk quickly about stop signs. Some of the comments and feedback that we've been receiving are just put more stop signs up. While stop signs can have an impact for traffic calming, they are not traditionally used for traffic calming, either recognized nationally or through the profession. They typically can have, in some cases, they can actually have a more negative impact. Vehicles having to stop so frequently end up speeding up between stop signs and paying more attention to the next stop sign than what's in between the stop signs. And that can create an unsafe situation as well. So that's just something to consider with that. Another thing to consider is whether or not to leave the existing four-way stop that was established at 27th in Louisiana. There's two sides to that discussion. One is it makes people stop. It's a three-way stop there. The other consideration to think about with that is when 31st Street opens up, vehicles stopping at 27th Street then have an option to make a decision to go straight, continue on southward to 31st Street or north to 23rd, or make a westerly turn onto 27th Street. You can make an argument either way for that. You know, the argument with removing the stop signs on Louisiana would be that vehicles would continue on past 27th without having to stop and take them to 23rd Street or to 31st Street. But then the other argument that you can make if you're on 27th Street is if the traffic volumes are high enough, you may not get an opportunity frequently enough to get out onto Louisiana Street safely. Some other items to consider tonight that aren't directly related to the traffic calming on 27th Street, but are issues that we are aware of. Louisiana from 23rd to 31st Street is, and we have known, is in need of maintenance. We had originally planned in 2014, when all these projects began, to do maintenance, program it in the 2016 budget. We didn't want to do it in 14 because of the projects that were getting ready to start, and also the congestion that we knew was going to be created with 31st Street being closed and with 23rd and Iowa being closed. So we had planned to program it in 16. With the recent discussions we've been having about 27th Street and the increased traffic, we're concerned about doing that maintenance or programming that maintenance for approval in 2016, that it'll have another negative impact on 27th Street. As we're doing that maintenance, people will try to avoid that location and head back down 27th Street after we've just kind of moved them off of 27th Street. So we would like maybe to consider bringing that into the 2015 program. It's currently not approved in the 2015 program, which unfortunately means it's also not funded in the 2015 program. That has a cost for minor patching and mill and overlay around $250,000 to a full maintenance project, which would include curb and gutters, repairing the traffic calming islands that are currently damaged on Louisiana. And that would have an approximate price tag of about $450,000. So wanted to make sure that you all are aware and have those options available to you as you make decisions moving forward. I guess other than the cost and finding the cost for that, one positive outcome or benefit of doing maintenance on 31st Street, or excuse me, on Louisiana before 31st Street opens is obviously we won't have that congestion, but I think doing maintenance in that area will also discourage motorists to come down Louisiana and travel down 27th Street. It'll be a lot simpler just to stay on 23rd Street, head west to Iowa. Which brings me to recommendations. Staff is recommending that the gap on 27th Street, which would be from here to Belhaven, be completed and open, ready to use in August when school resumes. That project could actually be added to our existing sidewalk gap project that we have in the works without having to do a whole lot of additional project design and scope work on that. Would also add ADA ramps at all of the crossings along this route to Belhaven, which that would complete sidewalk on the north side of 27th Street from Iowa to Louisiana. The other thing that we would recommend is that the raised, some type of device be placed here at Naismith Valley Park Crossing. I think traditionally and ideally it would be nice to have a raised crosswalk there and a hawk signal that pedestrians can activate and actually stop traffic. But there are less expensive alternate options available, Refuse Island, or just simply a raised speed hump, similar to what would be on 15th Street. As part of that discussion on the crossing there at Naismith Valley Park, as part of the SLT project, that trail now kind of dumps back out into the residential neighborhood. There will be a connector from that trail it'll come out behind Menards on 31st Street. It will also connect to the SLT trail. That's good, the rec path that will be parallel. So in essence, you can come through that park in Naismith Valley Park to the south and connect up with existing rec paths and travel pretty much all the way around to the west to Rock Chalk Park, or all the way basically to 11th and Haskell to the east and south. So we think that traffic across that street, bicycle and pedestrian traffic, will probably increase with those connections being available with the completion of the SLT project. The other things that we've kind of already talked about are the speed cushions and the traffic circles for consideration. Staff is recommending that those items be looked at and reevaluated once 31st Street is opened and we get a better sense of traffic counts in the area. The key to getting the appropriate type of traffic calming in any area is having the appropriate knowledge of what the actual or typical traffic patterns are in those neighborhoods. I don't think anybody would argue at the moment that the traffic patterns are not the typical patterns there. Will they go back to the pre-SLT 23rd Street numbers? I don't know. I suspect that some people will have figured out that that's a route that they want to take now that they've been doing it for a year. But I do believe that the numbers will go down. They were about 3,400 prior to those projects, and they were about 9,200 during the projects here just recently. So that's quite a bit of increase in traffic simply because of the construction. So I think it's advisable from a staff's perspective for us to design this to know exactly what type of traffic and issues that are out there. The SLT and, well, the 31st portion of that project is supposed to be open this summer. So it shouldn't take us too long once that opens to recalculate those numbers. As part of that, discussion, I know there could be some thought about, well, we're delaying the project, we're delaying putting traffic calming. Even if you gave us the green light tonight to do this project, the 31st Street would be open before we had a chance to do any design and actually do any construction. So I think it's a timing issue, maybe a little bit of a perception issue, but ultimately we'd like to get this done as quickly as we can get it done as funding becomes available. But I think it's important to do it with the right idea of what is appropriate there. Will the cushions alone take care of it? Do you need one of the traffic circles? Do you need both of them? They're relatively expensive in nature. So we want you to think about, have that idea when you're talking about, and that pretty much wraps up my input on this item. David Woosley, our traffic engineer, is here tonight. David Cronin, our city engineer, is here as well. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Good questions for Mark.
One quick one. Mark, last year, the timing on the light at 27th and Iowa was changed to be able to move more traffic through that intersection so it wouldn't stay blocked up. Have we changed that timing back at all?
David?
Yes. It's back to where it was? Okay.
What kind of shape is 27th Street in as far as needing reconstruction, or because what we've done in the past is wait until a street needed to be done, then we incorporate the approved traffic calming into that project?
That's a good question, Commissioner. I don't have the exact PCI number in front of me, but it is in very good shape. I would estimate it has a PCI somewhere above 65, which for that street would be within the goals that we have listed. So from timing to do this with a future maintenance project would be some time off.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know the exact date, but it was just recently overlaid prior to the traffic calming being approved.
Well, two of the things that you did bring up that I think are extremely important, that elevated crossing there with that hog light, because of the connections that we have, past Menards and all the way to the SLT, you don't realize the impact, and what we're telling people, the safety issues and how, that's going to be taken care of, across such a street. The other part is finishing those gaps in that sidewalk from Louisiana to 27th, I think is extremely important. I figure we got to figure out a way to make sure that that's funded somehow this year. And that's before school starts. I don't care if the traffic drops by 6,000 cars a day. That's just a necessity through there.
And that's what I wrote down in my notes too, that the sidewalk gaps are definitely really important.
Well, I mean, just stop and think of the importance of that connection because of being, that kind of street and the amount of traffic that's moving. Even without that kind of traffic, you don't want anybody darting out, onto that street. I mean, it's a bad deal. Stuart, test your memory or Mark. What was the actual recommendation from traffic safety a couple years ago? Was it the humps that were west of the Naismith Valley?
Edwin might know.
I was on the traffic safety commission, Stuart, and when we approved traffic safety suggestions, we actually didn't specify individual solutions, because those really need to be looked at in the engineering sense. And so it was a matter of, it was clear from the numbers, and I'm a little concerned about us discussing this in terms of today's traffic and why we need traffic calming now, because when this came up in front of the Traffic Safety Commission, we took one look at the numbers and said it meets absolutely every measure for the city's traffic calming policy, and immediately, with very little discussion, approved it unanimously. And because it was so clear that there was a need for it at the 3,400 number. And so it was, you know, yes, it's much, much worse now. I live in that neighborhood. I live at 2540 on Jesuit, right around the corner from 27th and Missouri. And it's impossible, basically, to walk across at Missouri and 27th during the busy times, which would be before school, rush hour after school, and then at lunchtime is
And
crazy.
as I recall, this went to the top of the list based on the 2012 numbers.
Yeah.
Right, and I also might add that the normal process or the typical process that traffic calming follows is once it's programmed and approved financially to be done, we meet back with the neighborhood and make sure that those issues are still existing. I didn't mention that in my presentation, I should have. We would do the traffic counts again, then we would hold additional meetings with the neighborhood to identify the locations. The other thing that we do with our traffic calming policy is we try to get at least 70% of the adjacent property owners to agree to have the speed cushion or the circle or the speed or whatever the traffic calming device is in front of their property. And so that takes a public consensus, public meeting discussion, which we have not had yet.
Well, finishing Louisiana before 31st Street opens is definitely important, because that would upset me quite a bit. And then I would just drive right back on 27th Street. So yeah, I definitely would like to put that in 2015.
You said that 31st is projected to be done this summer, and I know the process, but I mean, are we on pace, or is that just kind of talk?
It is on pace, Commissioner. KDOT, won't publicly say
Right.
the time frame, but we're expecting it to be middle of summer versus later in the summer.
Okay.
That's from Louisiana.
Yes, thanks, Chuck. That's the section from Louisiana west to Iowa will open.
I have one more question.
Sure.
It's not snarky. It's going to sound snarky. How much is the stop sign for installation,
Sure,
four-way stop?
Four-way stop, less than $200 to $300.
To do all four corners of an intersection?
That's just obviously just for the materials. We would need to spend some man hours to do a study and make sure what we have out there.
The stop sign, the three-way stop at 27th Louisiana has helped folks trying to get out of Park Hill Terrace, I think, and that the street just north on the east. So I think they'd like to keep that one. I don't know if you've talked to any of those folks.
I would agree. I think given the current traffic volumes out there, if I lived out there, I'd want to make sure I had an opportunity for vehicles traveling on Louisiana to stop so I could make a safe north or south turn. That may change with the reduction in traffic. It may not. That's not a huge issue. The reason I mentioned that in my presentation was it could have an adverse effect. In other words, vehicles would stop at 27th and then go, hey, I'm going to make a turn here, instead of just keep on going by and ignoring 27th Street.
Yeah, I definitely like that stop sign there. I do have, this is slightly off topic, the school right there kind of redid their left-hand turn lanes into the school, and from my ignorance just made it look worse. When in holding up traffic, like they removed the little outs to turn left. I assume that was a school decision and not a city decision?
I believe it was. David may have more information on that. And it does look kind of messed up at the moment because it's temporary devices that are not allowing you to get into that turn lane. As part of our maintenance program, if we are allowed to do that in 15, we would clean all that up, remove that turn lane, and make it look like it was designed, like it's currently being used, you wouldn't know that there was ever a turn lane there.
Well, I remember using Louisiana, and it seemed like when they did that, they made the traffic on Louisiana worse, just backed up, because you couldn't pull over to turn left, so you got stuck behind people turning into school. So it's very strange. Maybe I'll talk to the school district about that.
Maybe David.
Yeah, when the school district rebuilt those schools and the parking lots and changed their traffic flow within, at that intersection, all the traffic exits. That's a one-way out of those parking lots. So that's why we had to close off that southbound left turn lane, because you can't turn into the schools at that location. And the stuff that's out there is ugly, but temporary until the roadway can be reconstructed.
I'm just worried about safety.
Can I say something really quick about it? My kids get to work in there right south.
Hold on. Laura, hang on. Public comments real close. Okay, hang on just a second.
Yeah, this is the part where we ask staff all the questions. Well, it's something I feel like we should talk to the school district about if they want to keep it like that, especially if we might rebuild Louisiana. You know, I'm not worried about it looking ugly so much. I've been stuck in traffic at that school before when school is getting in or out. So I hope we look at that with the school.
Yeah, I think if we start the maintenance on that, that would be something we would do, is coordinate with 497, make sure it's how it works, give them our opinion of how it should work and what their needs are, and coordinate that, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be really good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mark?
Mark, are we starting to give any consideration to the effect of traffic on Louisiana and the type of traffic? You know, we're going to have a new major store open right around the corner on 31st Street there, and what that new traffic's going to be like coming off a highway and accessing Louisiana back to all points of town. Also, we had a new restaurant open at the west end of 27th and Iowa, and I know, you know, great restaurant. I mean, they bring in a lot of traffic, but the effects of those kind of developments at the end of that, is that having any major impact on, you know, the number of cars on 27th Street also?
I'm not sure, Commissioner Chuck, do you know, are we looking, I know there's no capital plan for that. Louisiana is one step down collector from 27th Street. It's kind of if you work back from Iowa to the west, Iowa's the arterial, then the major collector on 27th, and then Louisiana is a designated collector, but it's one designation below. Even though people are going to use it to get to 31st Street.
Well, I guess one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about as we look at making some type of improvements, you know, in the future on 27th Street, are we going to be looking at, you know, and you know, your idea of doing something on Louisiana now to upgrade that? Do we not need to know what the traffic is going to look like on Louisiana before we rebuild it or do something else to it?
We would. What we're suggesting now is
Just
basically a
overlay.
patch and a mill and overlay. That would be the lower number that I put out there to you tonight. The bigger number would be a much more, it would still be a maintenance in place, but it would be a much more elaborate with curb and gutter repairs and those types of things as well. But I think it's definitely something that we probably need to look at if we're going to spend a lot of money. But that's a pretty good stretch of pavement, and to my knowledge, we haven't looked at that yet.
Other questions for Mark?
Thank you.
Okay. Mark, thank you. And we will take some public comment on 27th Street.
Good evening. My name is John Rosen. I live in Arkansas, a block north of 27th. We no longer walk our dog at peak hours by going into Naismith Park because we can't. We have to play chicken with the traffic, and we don't like it. I am going to oppose most everything that Mr. Teal said. What I'll say will be relatively brief. I have written a much longer version of these comments, about 5 single-spaced pages. Mr. Teal has a copy. It includes a number of URLs and so on. As supporting evidence, I'm sure you can get the copies from him if you wish. Mr. Teal, if you play back what he said in your minds, what you'll hear is the word traffic as opposed to neighborhood or resident or people. He is talking about how to change the traffic. The thing that he is trying to do on 27th is to slow the traffic. Now, the traffic volume is way too high. What I think the neighborhood needs really is not slowing the traffic. The police have already done that. The neighborhood needs to reduce the traffic. So I will be discussing that in part. I'd also like to point out the huge irony of talking about traffic on 27th, traffic calming devices on 27th, today at the start of, Bicycle Month, because the speed of control devices that Mr. Teal is talking about are terrible for bicyclists. A vertical deflection device, that's a hump, isn't too bad. You just have to slow. Remember, bicycles don't have suspension. A horizontal deflection, like an aisle, like an island or a circle, is terrible. What bicyclists have to do is know where the vehicles are going to be and stay in a straight line at a fixed distance from the vehicle path. Whenever you narrow a street or turn, then the bicyclist's timing is thrown off and the safety is reduced. 27th is a designated bicycle route. It will be unsafe after these comments. Now, the reason that I am opposed to any traffic calming devices is simple. Each traffic calming device bypassing one of them, delays a large fire truck by 9 or 10 seconds. Shorter emergency vehicles are delayed by a few seconds. 9 devices, such as you see up there on the screen, 9 devices would produce a delay of 1 minute to 1.5 minutes, depending on the size of the vehicle. Each 1 minute delay in responding to a sudden cardiac arrest lowers the chance of survival by 7 to 10%. I am talking about the people in the neighborhood. Our lives are at risk if these traffic calming devices are installed. A study submitted to the city of Boulder, Colorado, estimated that their plans to install some traffic devices, I'm not sure exactly where or how many, would cause 5.3 to 6.5 additional deaths each year from sudden cardiac arrest, more deaths from other sources, but choking, whatever, asthma, but those were not able to be quantified. That's about 6 deaths per year. To put this in perspective, Boulder averages 2.8 traffic deaths per year. Traffic calming devices kill people. A master's thesis submitted to the University of Texas by a fireman estimated that installing devices in Austin, Texas would cause 37 additional deaths per year from sudden cardiac arrest alone. There is a formula about what happens with traffic calming devices. For every single death that they prevent through slowing traffic, they cause 85 deaths from medical emergencies. Firefighting works the same way. Flashover, when a room is engulfed in flames, can occur in 2 to 6 minutes. A 1 minute delay is the difference between a room with some items burning in it to a room that has totally burst into flame. Now, I'll personalize this. My voice is very rough. I have asthma, I'm being treated, but it's very rough right now. I can imagine a time in the future when I need to have someone there to help me breathe in a few minutes. I am hoping that the traffic control devices on 27th don't kill me. I recommend 4-way stop signs along 27th in Louisiana and perhaps pedestrian-operated stoplights. These stop signs could be put up this week. The traffic calming devices will be permanent, unlike stop signs. They will be expensive, unlike stop signs, and they will be forever, unlike stop signs. Now, I understand that if you put a stop sign in a area where people are expecting to speed, that people will speed up by, to make up lost time. If there's a stop sign at every single block, that won't happen. People will get the picture and drive elsewhere. What we need in our neighborhood is fewer cars. The speed isn't the issue. No one's dying. Pedestrian deaths are very rare. The major concern, though, is kids. I recommend extending the 20-mile-an-hour school zone west on 27th to the trail through the park and north on Louisiana. I want to also point out that emergency vehicles blow through stop signs. They don't need to stop. Emergency vehicles have to stop or have to slow down greatly for traffic control devices. By the way, firemen don't like it. They hit their heads on the ceiling when they're going over because the firemen are aware that how fast they get to the fire. The EMTs are aware how fast they get to a fire, to a medical emergency, determines who lives and who dies. I hope the City Council will vote against traffic calming devices, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosen, and thank you for your correspondence as well. Public comment on 27th Street.
Good evening. First, I just want to say that I feel really great.
Could we have your name for the record, please?
Mike Dupont.
Thank you, Mike.
I feel really great with the way the city has responded to people's concerns, and it shows that you care. So it makes me feel really happy to live here in Lawrence. I'd like to support the idea of a stop sign on every street corner. I was just recently in Topeka, and if you go into a school area where they don't want you speeding or driving, they have a stop sign at every single intersection, and you quickly get the picture. Don't drive on this street, go somewhere else. I mean, it's annoying, but it is cheap, and I would like to say I think it would probably be the cheapest and quickest solution. But I'm no expert in any of that. So I just wanted to make 2 or 3 short comments, and I'll keep it really short. One, if you're gonna ask the residents around if they support the calming devices, please also ask the parents of the kids who go to the school there. I think that would be fair. Include the students' parents, because a lot of kids, parents drive through there, a lot of kids are walking home, and you should include them in any type of survey you're doing, not just the people living there. And secondly, I've been reading a lot of the feedback from people. I really think that we get into a pickup truck mentality, I'll call it. I lived in Europe for 20 years. I didn't have a car until last year when we had our first baby. We couldn't get to the hospital without a car. The insurance would not pay for a, what do you call it, an ambulance. So we were forced to actually get a car and be able to drive ourselves to the hospital. It just was not possible. The taxi said they wouldn't take us, et cetera, et cetera. This is a long story. But we walked, I mean, I lived in Topeka for a year, and I walked everywhere. It was horrible. We moved to Lawrence because it's actually much more walking friendly. And a lot of the comments we're getting is from the pickup truck mentality, and it's great, I have a car, you know, just drive down the street. It's really, you know, you don't care about anything. But when you're walking, it's really much different. So I would like to invite our city council to borrow a niece or a nephew or a grandchild, or take your own children and get all together and start, let's say, at Panera's, try and get across the 23rd Street with a broken light button that doesn't work, then try and cross again to Checkers, get some food for a picnic, and then try and cross again on one of those stop signs and traffic islands that no one seems to care about, and then walk down the 27th Street and try and cross into the park with your kids in your hands and with these cars screaming by you and these trucks rumbling by you, where you're worrying if there's even enough distance between you and the truck, and you have to breathe all this emissions. It's crazy. And with the beating down heat where there's no trees to actually give you any cover, it's horrible. And I invite you to try that out and see how you like it. And I'm a software developer, and we have a term, it's called eat your own dog food, where the software developers are forced to actually use their own software that they develop. So I think the people who are designing these streets should actually try walking them for once. I'm not even gonna get started on actually bicycling on 27th. I think that would be suicidal. And I don't bicycle at all on any of the streets in the city. I only bicycle on the sidewalks, except on Mass where it's illegal, because the drivers have absolutely no respect at all for people on bicycles. Anyway, I'm getting myself started. So that's what my invitation to you guys. Come down to Indian Hills and walk around a little bit as a group. I think they did that in Barker. They did a walking evaluation of the city. I think you'll have a completely different perspective if you try walking around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dupont. Public comment.
My name is Landra Fair, and I bought a house on 27th Street between Missouri and Alabama in 2001. So I was part of the neighborhood association that wanted to get traffic calming back in, well, ever since I moved there, 2012, when it was approved. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that there was a problem at 3,000 cars, and 9,000 cars is, I mean, it's a little bit better because they don't go very fast compared to how fast they went when there was less cars. So keep in mind, when there's less cars, people go faster. The other thing I would like to ask, I am for traffic calming. I mean, I'm for anything that can get less traffic, slower traffic, so that people that live on 27th or people that go to Broken Arrow, go to South, walk to Checkers, walk to Dillon's, people that bike, just that it's safer for the residents and everyone that uses the street. But I would ask that when 31st opens, that the city does take an active role in getting people to stop using that street, to get the traffic back down at least to 3,000. So if there's any ideas that engineers have about signage that can get people to just maybe for a month or so somehow, I don't know, you can't use this street or something to deter them, maybe the stop signs temporarily, I don't know, that I would love to see something done to retrain people so that 27th doesn't have 9,000 people, you know, in 2 years. So, thank you.
Thank you. For public comment.
Hi, I'm Edwin Rothrock. I live at 2549 Yazoo Drive. And as I already said, I was on the Traffic Safety Commission when we approved it and the commission approved it. Just a couple of things I would like to, I also have some training in engineering, and despite the fact that it's called traffic calming, it actually does discourage people from standard traffic calming devices are based on fact-based engineering studies and decisions, and it actually does reduce the amount of traffic on a through street like that because it's inconvenient. People that are in a hurry do not like to use streets that have a lot of effective traffic calming. I think if you look at the situation with Harvard between Monterey Way and Wakarusa, that's probably a very similar parallel. It's just off of a major thoroughfare, between two actually, and people were using it because it was a very low conflict way to get through. And the traffic calming on that greatly reduced the traffic on Harvard. That was a success story, and it would be a very similar success story, I believe, if we put it into on 27th Street. She did mention that we need to be a little careful to take some of the new traffic numbers at face value because they're worse than they appear, because that was done, those traffic measurements were put in place in the midst of intense police enforcement along 27th Street. We had the speed sign out there at Naismith Park. We had a high visibility of police. So the number of people would be higher without those mitigating circumstances. I really appreciate the fact that they were there, but I'm just saying those numbers are lower than they a uninfluenced study would have had there. And it greatly slowed down the traffic speeds. I'm a little concerned about the 70% because the entire from about 4 blocks east of Iowa to Iowa, all of those residences are rentals. And I don't know that we've ever had a situation where traffic calming had to be approved by 70% of the owners in an area that went through that intense a rental area. So that, I look at those numbers and I wonder if that might not be a difficult bar to reach in an area that is saturated with rentals like that one is. I also would encourage that the whole Runza situation be looked at and addressed. I know now that a very ungrateful businessman who's no longer doing business here, his delivery trucks will no longer be driving left of center around that island to get to the frontage road, or using the lawn at the back of his property to cut through the residential neighborhood back there. But it's custom made to have people drive through Runza to access that frontage road. And I don't know exactly what a good solution would be there, but I've thought that maybe extending the island a little bit further to keep people from turning into Runza and then down the frontage road. Because I know that if you talk to any cop, they say they could write tickets there all day long when there's traffic, because people use that constantly. And it's a problem. And it encourages the use of 27th to access all of the businesses all the way out to Home Depot, because you can get on the frontage road instead of going out onto Iowa. And lastly, and I say this, and we had this discussion on the Traffic Safety Commission, right now, the traffic calming policy that the city has in place is on the edge of becoming a farce, because nothing has been done with so many of those projects that really need attention. We talked about whether we should stop hearing people's requests for traffic calming in front of the Traffic Safety Commission, because we knew that we would say to them, yes, we pass this on with our recommendation to the city, but there has not been any funded traffic calming situation outside of road reconstruction since 2007, I believe. I think it's around 2007 when the last traffic calming was funded by itself. And so it was needed when we recommended approval back in 2012. It's 3 times worse now. If you're ever going to approve funding for traffic calming, I think you have to do this, or you need to seriously reevaluate the concept that there is a traffic calming policy in the city of Lawrence, because it's just not working right now. There's 24, 25 approved traffic calming areas in the city, and they're just not moving forward. So, thank you.
Mr. Rothrock, thank you, and thank you for your service on the Traffic Safety Commission. Good evening.
My name is Carol Bowen. I live at 403 Dakota Street, which is actually in the Park Hill neighborhood. I appreciate Commissioner Amix's comments, because the pictures I've seen, the maps I've seen, are not big enough. Whatever happens on 27th Street happens at a different level in the Park Hill neighborhood as well. The traffic does not like that Louisiana and 23rd Street light, and it will do anything it can to avoid it, and that's why you got that comment from Park Hill Terrace. Park Hill Terrace, by the way, is a collector street for our pedestrians walking to school. As usual, I have a bunch of stories. I've been at this for a while. A little over 20 years ago, I walked to work. I walked to work at Haskell. I lived on Nebraska Street, same neighborhood. I walked home at lunchtime to check on my son, who was home ill. I walked into the house, he was about 13, very cynical, and he was laughing. He was sitting on the couch with his blanket and a pillow and looking out the front window and laughing. And I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "There goes the school bus, 3 times for the school bus. There goes UPS, they've gone by twice. The only guy who knows where he's going is the mailman." And I found out that all of our streets were closed off. 23rd Street was closed off for laying fiber, the very first fiber in town. And Louisiana Street was closed off for a gas line. So I called the city and I said, you realize you've cut off an entire neighborhood because we're somewhat landlocked? And they said, yes. and I said, well, you know, you're denying us access to our neighborhood. And they said, well, what do you think we should do about it, Carol? And I said, has it occurred to you that you're denying emergency access to a neighborhood full of senior citizens? Oh, well, maybe we better open up something. And I thought to myself, we don't have a whole lot of planning there. We need to mature a little. Well, we're not there yet, are we? 15 years ago, and this one makes me really sad. 15 years ago, after 2 years of study and participation by 4 neighborhoods south of campus, we put together the Louisiana Street Traffic Calming Study, the same conversation we're having now. The very same. The traffic volumes were low. Every time new retail was added, and Commissioner Amos, you're absolutely right, when those new businesses go in, there'll be a couple of thousand more cars. We know this from experience. The traffic calming never happened. I don't know if the pedestrian islands were part of it or not. We're lucky to get them. Parkwood neighborhood loves them, absolutely loves them. Because now we can get across the street. Looking at Westlakes and driving to it does not make sense. By the way, did you know that in front of the schools, part of the traffic calming plan was to put a roundabout? That was a lot of work. We went to the city commission. We asked for help. We didn't have solutions. They hired a consultant. We had a coalition. We called it a coalition. We didn't really have a name. It was Indian Hills, Park Hill, Centennial, and University Place, because the problems went all the way down the hill. If you look up the hill, you can see the traffic stream down. There has been no relief, and I could see 27th Street experiencing the same thing that Louisiana Street has, and that's just all of a sudden becomes a major thoroughfare, and it's okay. I read a letter to the editor a couple of weeks ago. Some poor man had his lawn dug up twice in 2 weeks and reseeded because we don't coordinate our projects. It's not easy to coordinate them, I'm sure, but we're still not coordinating them. I'm here tonight. I live on Dakota Street. It's a relatively quiet street, except that I've noticed that there's been a lot of traffic with different behavior lately. The traffic is speeding. It doesn't hesitate, it doesn't pause, and it's hazardous. The visibility is very poor because of the curved streets, and there are no stop signs, nothing to impede it. I was almost hit one. I have to tell you this. I bought myself an adult tricycle so I could get around, so now I'm part of the bicycle world again. I was almost hit coming from Checkers, a little 4-way intersection. It should be very quiet, but the car coming was so fast, there was no way he could have seen me as he came around the curve. And it's a good thing that I was not going very fast. I can't. So we've got this traffic. I called Dave Woosley and I said, I think we need a traffic count. Something's going on here. He tried a traffic count and it was really goofy because we lost 100 cars from one intersection to the other. We don't know what happened to them. So we were going to do it again, and I thought, well, no, because I started hearing about the Indian Hills problem. I thought, I know what's going on. They're just zipping through. They'll zip through this way, or they'll go around Montana, down Park Hill, they'll go through Utah, they'll do anything through our neighborhood to get to 27th Street. The behavior is different with through traffic. The speed makes a difference. They're thinking point A to point B. They don't hesitate. They're not looking for a driveway. They're not looking for a house number. They're not looking for a turn. So I have 2 thoughts, and I've kind of heard them before. Traffic calming is not going to happen. The list is long. And I don't even know if a Louisiana Street traffic calming study is even on the list anymore because that was back in 2000. So not only do we have a backlog of traffic calming, we have a backlog of problems that have not been solved. We need to do some more straightforward things to solve the problems while we're waiting for traffic calming. And perhaps we need to prioritize. Maybe we need to look at that entire list again, see where we absolutely need the traffic calming, and take more cost-efficient and efficient ways of handling the rest of the problems. The city has not developed a process for preparing for construction. I have a picture that I posted on the Pedestrian Coalition website, and I like this picture because it's kind of ironic. It's a picture that says, sidewalk closed, and it's got a picture of City Hall in the background. No options for the pedestrians. So now you're talking about sidewalks around the schools on 27th and Louisiana. What's going to happen to pedestrians while you do that? We really need to uptick our processes here. You need some kind of a walk around. You need to accommodate those pedestrians. So my recommendations are few since I do not live in Indian Hills. The one thing I do have to say is there's a difference between traffic calming and a detour. And by golly, we've got a detour issue here. It's an oopsie, but you don't put off an oopsie, you fix it right away, yesterday. We should be throwing everything we can at it, and I strongly suggest stop signs, brightly painted crosswalks. 27th Street should look like a zebra and any other street that the neighborhood thinks they need. And the school zone should start after West Lakes. Slow the traffic down there so that by the time they get to that three-way stop, and all of our intersections are three-way that I can think of, the traffic is already slowing down. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowen. Other public comment? Hi, Laura.
Hello. Okay. My name is Laura Glockner, and tonight I really just wanted to bring the issue back home for me and express why I've been so passionate about this in the first place. The straw that broke the camel's back for me with 27th Street was when my children's lives were put in danger by a decision the city made to remove our school crossing on 27th, and then proceeded to apply an outdated school crossing policy, removing our 20-mile-an-hour school zone without notifying the neighborhood or the school. My nephew was almost hit by a truck, and our children were out there in the traffic on 27th Street using an invisible crosswalk with no school zone. As we began to ask questions about what was happening to our street, we found the issue was much bigger than we knew, but ultimately what I discovered was that I am just as much at fault as anyone else for not paying attention to what was happening and not being involved enough to provide the feedback needed for people to make decisions about my neighborhood. I am also guilty of just sitting back and watching it all play out as if it was just the way it was and that there was nothing we could do. I believe that there is something we can do. I believe that we do not have to sit idly by while our neighborhood street is being used as a highway for the city, and we do have a right and a responsibility to hold the city government accountable for it. The current safety issues still exist on 27th Street. School gets out for summer on the 21st, and there's lots of talk about fixing it for school, and I just want to say, at least at school, we have crossing guards, we have fixed sets of time where the kids are crossing 27th, And when school gets out, we don't. They're out on the streets all the time. We've got activities going on at Broken Arrow and South Middle School. My kids will be going later in the morning, walking up to Broken Arrow and South Middle School, but with no crossing guard, no slowed speed, and hopefully the police enforcement will remain. All the talk of planning and traffic studies and task forces and meetings and the blame games and the media coverage, they really don't amount to anything if you don't approve funding for Public Works to be able to apply any of the solutions. In discussing how to prevent something like this from happening in the future, I suggest that this commission start with not continuing to leave 27th Street unfunded and unplanned going forward, which is what caused the issue in the first place. Regardless of how anyone feels about me personally, or whether we disagree on solutions, I think that every one of us in this room can get behind making sure our children are provided safe access to the schools and the parks in our neighborhood where we live, and I think that we can all agree that that currently is not the case on 27th Street. 27th Street is a neighborhood street with a documented history of cut-through traffic. It has a school crossing, a trail crossing, is a proposed safe routes to school street, and ends at 2 major Lawrence schools, and has been sitting on the top of the traffic calming list as a #1 priority for Public Works since 2013. Please approve and allocate funding for 27th Street for your budget, and please put some more effort into consideration into how the streets are being managed around our schools, because what is currently happening does not reflect well on the city's priorities. In fact, it seems to me that everything else has been more important than the safety of our children around our schools and parks.
Thank you, Laura. Other public comments?
Good evening, Mayor Farmer and Commissioners. Michael Allman again. And I want to thank Mark Teal and everybody else who's come up with some ideas here tonight. I always find it interesting. We have a love-hate relationship in Lawrence. There's never a shortage of ideas. Everybody has ideas and opinions. But I'm of the opinion that, I'm getting this figured out, that we're actually having a slightly inaccurate discussion tonight. And I guess, I'm not sure where it originates, but I guess it stems from the traffic calming policy. I think really the discussion we should be having is traffic management, and that putting it in the context of traffic calming is much too narrow. There's lots more to traffic management than just reducing speed. Mr. Rosen brought out a very important point there about volume management and speed management. Very different problems, that we need to have a correct analysis of the problem to come up with the correct solutions. So Sustainability Action would like to approach this as a speed and volume reduction question. But we see it primarily as volume reduction. What we see in the Public Works proposal right now is really fairly unacceptable and I think way too expensive. There are much simpler and more effective devices that we could use from our toolbox. We'd like to recommend 3 options in various combinations. There could be more, but we think these 3 could be the most effective. From the Bicycle Boulevard playbook, or the Walk Bicycle Street playbook, whatever you want to call it. They're effective in their own merits. Chicanes, that's for speed management. Doesn't do very much for speed, for volume management. Diagonal diverters are for volume management. Very effective tool in partial entry closures, which Lawrence already does use in some circumstances for volume management. Curb chicanes, if you're not familiar with them, I think people here are, basically curb extensions that create a serpentine road, so it's horizontal deflection. Mr. Rosen did bring up a very important point about bicyclists needing to have a straight pathway, and when they're designed my pointer. When they're designed a certain way, this gap, which is generally for stormwater, can be wide enough to have a bicycle lane there, so the bicyclists don't have to navigate among motor vehicles. So that can be addressed with a chicane. Emergency response, as Mr. Rosen also pointed out, prefer chicanes to speed humps. They don't have to slow down. They can navigate through them at the typical speed that they like to travel as it is without stopping. They're not an impediment for bicyclists. Another important message from Mr. Rosen, thank you. Bicyclists hate speed humps. Every time you have to slow down, and this is the same reason, I'm sorry, Mr. Rosen, the same reason that bicyclists hate stop signs. And it's, every time a bicyclist has to slow down or stop, you have to regain your momentum. It takes 25% more energy, and I think it's 33% more time to get back up to speed. So speed humps are not good for bicyclists. Unfortunately, stop signs are not either. I know that from conversations with Commissioner Bowley, he feels it very important that bicyclists be held to the same law and have come to complete stops at stop signs. So that would have the same effect for stopping the momentum of a bicyclist if we have all these stop signs street after street. Stormwater flows will go in the gap between the chicanes and the curb, as I said, and you can put an optional center curb between the two chicanes, like on this bottom illustration, so that people just don't speed straight through. That's optional. It doesn't have to be there. It might be a problem for emergency vehicles depending on the lane widths. Oops. Not what I want. So chicane construction, there's lots of options to do it. They could be a planter, probably the most expensive option. A simple curb, which is the option that I'm going to focus on later on, or temporary tire bumpers. These are on Crossgate right now. They're the only chicanes I know of in Lawrence. Very simple, very cheap, inexpensive, and could be temporary trial basis. It's always advisable when putting in new types of traffic management devices that you do it on a trial basis. When Lawrence did our very first partial closure at Schwartz and 6th Street, we did it on a trial basis. Same at 7th and Connecticut. So these could be done on a trial basis. Diagonal diverter, as I mentioned, a volume management, it redirects traffic. If we consider this street to be 27th Street, traffic has to turn off the street. Cut-through traffic can't live that way. They don't go the way they want to go. They won't use the street anymore. These could be done, 2 of these at Ridgecourt and Alabama, where the mini circles are proposed, and be much more effective. A diagonal diverter at 27th and Ridge, essentially they're these curb extensions from the 2 corners, and then an optional little curb in the middle, but it has to be narrow enough so that motor vehicles can't go through. Motor vehicles coming from Iowa Street would have to turn up Ridgecourt and go to 23rd. Residents, you have to consider the impact on people who live there, of course. Residents could then come around or round off to 27th Terrace and back to get into the neighborhood. Any traffic management device of this sort, by definition, causes inconvenience, by definition. So we have to balance between the cut-through traffic and how much you inconvenience them so they don't want to go that way anymore, and how much inconvenience level the residents can bear. So that's a consideration if you want to use this, but there are options for the residents to get through. The same applies for Alabama. Traffic coming on Louisiana would have to turn north once again, diverting all the traffic on both these intersections north to 23rd Street, which is where they should be. They also, neighborhood residents also have the option to go to 27th Terrace and get back into the neighborhood that way, or from one of the north approaching streets. Partial auto closure, like we did use at Schwartz and Rhode Island. This is the type that Lawrence has been using. There's another type that's basically a curb extension so that there's one motor vehicle lane and one bicycle lane. So there's two ways you can do that one. That would best be used right there at Louisiana and 27th. Traffic coming on 27th simply could not get on to 27th Street. Can't turn there. Now that I think about it, and I actually thought of this before, there should be another one right there at Park Hill Terrace so people can't cut through there. So those are three very simple devices. They would mainly control the volume of the traffic. Any cars, after a few days, they try to get through here. Once they realize they can't, they have to go north, they're not going to come back 3 days later. They won't be back. It's that fast. The chicanes will manage the speed better. But if you have all this cut-through traffic gone, the speed will probably be manageable anyway. You have options. You could do all of these. You could do just the diagonal diverters. Just doing the closure probably wouldn't be enough. It wouldn't affect the traffic coming from the west unless we figure out a way to put a closure at that end. So our cost estimates that we came up with the Sustainability Action are based on numbers that we hastily found at the Institute for Traffic Engineers and from the Columbus, Ohio Traffic Management Cost Estimates Guidebook, or whoever, I can't remember the full name. Chicanes, a set of two, $20,000, 5 sets of those, just as you had 5 sets of speed humps, $100,000. That's the same as the 5 speed cushions plus the pedestrian hybrid beacon. I'm not a fan of the hybrid beacon. It works great when somebody activates it, but when nobody's there to activate it, the cars can just speed right by. It's a passive device, whereas chicanes, diverters, they're there 24 hours all the time doing their job. Diagonal diverters, set of 2 of those curb extensions, $20,000. 2 sets of the 2 streets, $40,000. That's less than the mini traffic circles. Of course, Public Works will run their own numbers, and I could be wrong on those numbers, but that's within the ballpark. Partial auto closure, $10,000. I think that's probably right. What would it cost at Schwartz Road, approximately? But these are the numbers that we came up with. Just to give you an idea, this could be done quickly with those temporary tire bumper kind of chicanes, or used for the diagonal diverters, however you want to use them. It's a trial run, could be done in the next week, really. I would suggest if you do that, you put reflectors up as well. Maybe these flags that you put on the new stop signs or whatever. So thank you for your time, and I hope that provides you some options.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Any other public comments?
Hi, I'm Chris Flowers.
Hi, Chris.
I live at 27th and Ridge Court. And also, I'm a delivery driver, so I'm probably one of the I don't speed, but I use 27th Street as a shortcut from Louisiana to Iowa. And the reason people are using it is because it's the only street from Louisiana to Iowa south of 23rd, now that 31st is closed. And once 31st is open, people are going to be using it again, because as a driver, I would prefer to use 31st to 27th because there's no stop signs. I mean, it's two-way, you can get around. And also about the idea of the traffic circle at 27th and Alabama, there's already a 4-way stop. And my problem with those circles is, okay, first, if there's a bicyclist there, like, have you ever tried to share a road with a bicyclist in the middle of an intersection with one of those circles in it? And I don't understand the purpose because everyone's already at a stop anyway. So what's it slowing down if you're already at a stop? The raised crosswalks, I have no problems with, and I think there should be more crosswalks. I think the problem is crossing the street, and there aren't crosswalks. More stop signs, that's going to cause more traffic problems because it's not going to keep people from using it because it's the only street from Louisiana to Iowa. It's just going to cause more backing up. And I would suggest a roundabout instead at 27th in Alabama. So, because when school gets out, that's one of the problem areas is that everyone stopped at the stop sign at Alabama. And if you look at what happened at 19th and Barker, where it was a four-way stop and they added a roundabout, and that stalled a lot of traffic back up there. And really the backup problem's coming when school gets out. And I think the four-way stop at Alabama adds to traffic getting backed up. And I'm not really sure of a solution, but also I want to keep in mind that it is, I believe, a secondary street. And some of these other things like the Chicanis that are on Crossgate's not a secondary street. And I believe the way it's at Crossgate is that only one car can go through at a time. And I think that's going to cause a lot more problems. And also that part about trying to keep people from using it at all, well, it's a secondary street. And like when snowplow comes, it's one of the first streets that gets plowed because it's, I want to say, I'm not sure, I don't know the actual planning, but it's a street that they want people to use the street instead of cutting through residential areas. And that one where we don't let people, like force people to turn, then the residents have to cut through other residential streets. So that's basically all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flowers. Any other public comment on this item? Hi.
Hi, my name's Jenny Pastrano, and I'm the homeowner that lives on the southwest corner of Alabama and 27th Street. And I have a vested interest in not having a roundabout at that intersection because, in fact, you actually saw an aerial picture of my house in one of the photographs just now. My driveway is literally about 3 feet away from that intersection. And I'm concerned about everybody's safety, obviously, in the neighborhood. But I'm also concerned about mine because I'm afraid that I'm going to be rear-ended if there's a circle there. I have to stop immediately as I exit that intersection to make a left-hand turn across traffic. So I was curious what kind of safety measures they could incorporate if a circle or roundabout did go there to prevent that happening, because that would block a circle. There would be no exit because I'd be in the way of an exit trying to get into my own home. I think that's basically all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, back to the commission.
We got a problem, you know?
I've got lots of thoughts written down. Should I just start?
Go for it.
Everyone's being awful quiet. Well, I'm still in favor of the four-way stop signs. I just am. You know, we have all these other traffic calming measures that cost thousands and thousands of dollars. We're looking for more of a temporary fix as well, I think, until 31st Street opens. And I think that would be the way to go. And like one of the public said, it's an immediate fix that we can just put out there. I mean, that would take like a week or so to install. I don't want to assume too much, Chuck, how long it would take, but it would be a very short time commitment to actually get them up and working. As I already said, the sidewalk gaps need to be addressed as well. I totally agree with painting more crosswalks, especially around 27th Street, perhaps expanding the school zones on top of that. I don't think I would do it all the way to Naismith Park, but definitely, you know, paint lots of lines all over 27 Louisiana, all around it. I totally agree with that. The traffic calming, as well, I'm not as excited about because I don't know if most of you guys know this, but I'm a pet sitter, so I drive all over the city every day, and I drive through streets that don't have traffic calming, streets that just have sidewalks, stop signs. I drive down Harvard Street all of the time, I curse that roundabout, 2 of them all the time. So I'm not a fan of those fixes because as a driver, what I've noticed is I don't actually pay attention to anything off of the road when I go through streets like that. And the difference is when I go to a 4-way stop, I actually have to stop and look around, and I become aware of my surroundings as well. When I pass over the Lawrence speed cushions that's between 9th and Harvard as well, I think we put into there. I either try to hit one of the dips that are in, I don't know what they're called, sorry, or I'm able to go along the side and really come close to the curb. You know, I admit I do this. And I noticed one of the homeowners put a giant boulder there because I assume a lot of people are doing that. But the point is I'm not paying attention to anything off of the street when I'm going through those. I'm just looking for the most efficient and expedient way for me to get through the traffic calming measures. While when it's a 4-way stop, I actually am forced to stop and look around. And so I'm just more in favor of 4-way stops in general. I think we could probably add a couple. I am in favor of a raised crosswalk at the Naismith Valley Park, perhaps some kind of signal light. I think that would be a great idea as well. I think I already talked about the changes that we need to look at with Louisiana and get it fixed. I think that after 31st Street is done, after we get our own Louisiana stuff done, I think in 6 months, we need to do another traffic count of 27th Street, which pains me to say that because I don't know how many we've done in the past few years. But I think with the 4-way stops, with the completion of 31st Street and fixing Louisiana as well, and the expanded school zones, I think that we might see some reduced measures there. And that is my personal experience. As a driver, only then would I avoid 27th Street, is the 4-way stops, which I think is what most of these people in the room want me to do. So that's what would affect me. It's an anecdotal evidence, sorry.
You know, there's a couple things that Vice Mayor Soden just said that I was going to say, so I'm going to say a lot of what you said was spot on. There's a couple things I want to add, and I think it goes to Mr. Rothrock's comments. If you're still here. You know, he talked about, I believe it was him that made the comments about potentially our traffic calming policy becoming a farce. You know, my wife and I have to make a budget every single week. We live by a pretty tight budget, and I understand that I can't spend stuff that I don't have. And that's the way I've lived for a very long time, and that's the way I think a city ought to operate as well. I tend to agree with Mr. Rothrock that we have this problem where we like to tell people that we're going to do things to make their lives better. You know, when you're an elected official, that's a really great way to get reelected. You know, you nod at people and they say things and you say, yep, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The reality is, though, we're telling a whole lot of people that we're going to do things that we don't actually have any funding at all to do. And this is problematic. This is borderline lying to people, in my opinion. The same way that my wife and I have to make a budget every week and stick to it. You know, I would propose that when it comes to traffic safety and traffic calming, that we operate under similar circumstances. That we don't tell people that we will do traffic calming on their street unless we actually have funding to do traffic calming on their street. You know, pay as you go is a philosophy that a lot of people don't like because it actually requires you to say no periodically. And saying no periodically is an unpopular thing to do, and it's a bad way to have any longevity politically. But it also makes a whole lot of sense, and it's actually a thing rational people do in their day-to-day lives. And I like to think that our city commission could operate as a rational person. And so my proposal would be very simply, that, and perhaps this starts at the Traffic Safety Commission level. You know, I think we need to stop telling people that we are going to go forth with traffic calming if we don't have funding to actually go forth with traffic calming. You know, I think, you know, Mr. Rothrock's comments hit home very hard with me that he's got a great point. You know, we've got to quit lying to people. If we're not going to do stuff, we got to quit telling them we're going to. And we have to start, you know, if in 2013, I believe it was, we said this was our #1 priority, you know, what are we doing in 2015? We haven't done anything. That's not a #1 priority if we haven't done anything. And so, you know, that's my 2 cents worth on that matter.
Well, let me go. You know, I really don't disagree with a lot of what the Vice Mayor and Commissioner has just said. I do think that we do have a serious problem along 27th Street. I do want to make sure that we don't forget the sidewalk as we come down the hill from Louisiana Street. I think that filling those gaps, you know, is just, it's an absolute necessary. I was looking at the traffic code and the section 2B.07 and the multi-way stop applications that are there. It seems like that you can come up with any criteria that you want here as you look at evaluating the location of a stop sign as you use it as an interim traffic device. And I think that if we are going to do something that we are going to, you know, we're going to fund improvements along that road. I think one of the things, and Vice Mayor, I appreciate your comments about stop signs. They're pretty inexpensive. We can put them up fairly quickly. But if we use them again as according to our code, as an interim measure while we figure out a way for the installation of, you know, whatever traffic, you know, calming or whatever it's going to be in the future. Well, it says traffic control. So I assume that that's all the same. So I think that what we ought to do is if there's something that a majority of the commission wants to look at as far as multi-way stops in the area, and if we're going to look at additional crosswalks, whatever it may be, I think that we ought to look at this application in the code, direct staff to come back with a recommendation on a possible couple locations on that roadway that this code would be able to use to be able to fit that need. That's all I got, Mayor.
I think you're all right. We've got a problem. We need to do something about it. I'm concerned about permanent four-way stops as a solution to this problem. I think it's important to utilize the expertise of staff and look at re-engineering the street to accommodate the flow that it's designed for, and how we can have safety for the neighborhood. You know, in my time on the Traffic Safety Commission, I experienced some of the frustration that Edwin referred to, and came to the budget meeting, as I recall, at the fire station last year, and talked about traffic calming. And now I'm on the other side, and I, you know, see the needs that we have, the resources that we have. But this is a very important issue, and I hate the idea that we would try to do a permanent solution by just putting four-way stops in, because that's not sending the right message to the citizens of Lawrence. So I support interim, but
Mayor. Yeah, Commissioner, that's why I bring up the word interim over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, we can use it from our code as
Right.
long as we look at it as an interim fix. One of the concerns that I have, though, one of the real concerns that I have is once you put these in place, it's hard to remove them.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
don't care how interim we make them,
Right.
but
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think, you know, as we try to go back to what will be the new normal, we need to really work with staff, with the neighborhood, to say we need to come up with real fixes for this, not just interim solutions.
again, I hope, Mayor, I hope we don't forget once 31st Street does open, you know, the effects that that is going to have on Louisiana Street and, you know, potentially, you know, maybe traffic going down on 27th Street. But we really need to be aware of that area because these are two extremely major roadways that not only the neighborhood and the fact that the responsibilities that we have to the folks that live there, those are streets that are designed to carry vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians, you know, whatever. But they've got to be safe.
And I guess I'd like to get a clarification. This is a collector street? Can you provide us the definition of a collector street, just so that we all know what we're talking about?
Generally speaking, the purpose of a collector street is to collect all the traffic from within the neighborhood on both sides and direct that out to the nearest arterial street, which are generally for crosstown traffic. But the collectors is to take up all the traffic within the neighborhood and get it efficiently and quickly out to the arterial street system.
And I also want to keep in mind what Ms. Bowen said about the Park Hill. I mean, you know, as you say, Mike, it's Louisiana, it's Park Hill, it's a big problem.
Yeah, it's south of 23rd Street from, you know, from Iowa Street east. But we can go through a number of neighborhoods around town and we can put this same thing here. But very few are going to have the traffic concentration, I think, or the traffic numbers that exist on these two roadways, you know, at this time. So, except Kentucky and Tennessee.
Those are all great comments. I just have a few thoughts I want to throw out for discussion. I'm looking at the KDOT. It's not in the agenda packet, but it's a traffic count city maps, and it looks like 23rd and Louisiana has a daily traffic count of about 30,000. Does that sound right? This is in August of 2013. Probably more now. I don't know how much more, but 30,000-ish. And then going down Louisiana, there's 13,810 cars. So basically, if we're taking today's numbers with 2013's numbers, 9,000 of those 13,000 are now going down 27th Street. The 31st Street traffic was 14,000. I guess my concern is if we've got a couple of options here that I think are worth considering. We're either going to put 10 to 20% more traffic out on 23rd Street is option number one, or option number two is that people are going to find another way to cut through to get from, and I'm just thinking of our friends on Arkansas Street. Somebody's going to go down 27th, turn left on Arkansas, and then a straight shot on 25th. I guess my concern is what happens when we make 27th inconvenient? Where do those cars go? Because the only place for them to go right now, if we put stop signs up tomorrow, is 23rd. What will that do to traffic on 23rd if we increase it by 20% just by virtue of putting stop signs up? Or if they don't go to 23rd, where else are they going to go? And what other, what other street are we going to have? And I appreciate all the work that Laura's done. And so many who've given input. I just have concerns that I just don't know where else they're going to go.
Mayor, we built a $6 million intersection at 23rd and Iowa that seems to be working very, very well.
Absolutely.
And is designed to carry, I think, those amounts of traffic
Sure.
at the intersection of two highways.
Well, I guess 23rd and Louisiana.
23rd and Louisiana, if you're going to put them back on 23rd,
They're going to have to go down to Louisiana, or they go to Alabama, and then cut through on 25th.
I guess the real problem here is that we're having a conversation about a permanent solution in a world where 31st hasn't been reopened.
Right.
We can't have a permanent conversation before 31st is reopened. I just can't have it.
And that's why, again, I bring up, if there is the possibility of any type of control that I think can add some safety, if you look at a stop sign on an interim basis until that roadway opens and you have that evaluation that can happen of that whole area. Because we're gonna know what's gonna happen on Louisiana Street and on 27th Street as soon as 31st Street opens.
Yeah, otherwise we're just shooting in the dark.
Oh, yeah.
You have, I mean, I understand this is an interim thing, but you've got the same number of stop signs on 25th as you have on 27th. You have two. You have 25th in Alabama and then 25th in Louisiana. And if we make 27th so difficult, I think we're gonna have our friends along 25th Street coming in here in a couple weeks saying, people are zooming down my street at 50 miles an hour, and the traffic count on 25th is gonna be way more than it is right now. I mean,
25th in Alabama isn't a four-way stop. Louisiana 27th is a four-way stop.
okay, thank you.
As a driver, I would go to the four-way stop.
So that would be my only concern. I mean, I know interim things are needed because I certainly don't want the death of a child or anybody on my hands or on ours for sure. I just have concerns that we're gonna be creating another issue by virtue of trying to solve this one, and I'm not sure that that's good public policy, frankly.
Well, it took us maybe a year to get to this point. So, because of 31st Street. So,
I guarantee if you have 25th Street get 6,000 more cars overnight or within a week because people don't want to sit at 5 stop signs, they're going to be some pretty unhappy people.
That's part of the problem is, I mean, the reality is the problem is created by the existence of traffic. There's no amount of boulders I can put in my yard to keep you out of my yard that's gonna stop, you know. I was trying to find it here. I think, John, it might have been your comment. You know, we're not trying to slow traffic, we're trying to remove traffic, right? It's a valid point. You know, you can't park a boulder slightly crooked. It's not gonna reduce car volume. You know, and to your point, Mayor, I mean, we're going to shift it from one place to another. It's got to go somewhere. I mean, people have to get from here to here. We're not going to stop that.
And I guess the expectation is that people would go, you know, coming in from Iowa Street to get to Louisiana, all the way down to 23rd, all the way down Iowa, and then turn right on either Alabama and zip down 25th, or go all the way to Louisiana. And you know, that intersection needs to be rebuilt. It's small for, I think, what we need it to be right now. And we've had conversations about that with relationship to CIP things. And I'm just not sure that somebody would go all the way down to our newly beautifully built 23rd in Iowa, all the way down Louisiana, then all the way down Louisiana. The traffic's got to go somewhere. And I just, you know, I don't know what to do here.
Plug a hole one spring, another one springs up.
Right.
Well, one thing I can say about 25th Street, as a street I have tried to turn into a cut through, unsuccessfully, by the way, because I drive for a living. That's what I do for fun. The amount of parking on the sides of streets is very impactful for wanting to drive down a street. And 25th Street between Louisiana and Alabama definitely has plenty of cars along the sides there that I do not enjoy driving next to. So there is that too. There's not as much on-road parking on 27th Street.
25th Street with that parking has a natural traffic calming.
Right.
I mean, you just can't go. So, Mayor, can I suggest that maybe as a possible discussion or direction to direct staff at looking at the policy, making recommendations on maybe a couple places of stop signs, interim stop signs, but also to look at the other areas in the neighborhood where, you know, we may be creating the problems that you bring up, you know, that maybe we're just not seeing. If we do this on 27th Street, maybe we do create another problem somewhere else. But allow them to have the time to, you know, whatever's necessary to make sure that they're seeing our concern. But to come back with a recommendation on interim stop sign locations
And the sidewalk gaps.
and the sidewalks.
Do we need to say anything about Louisiana? for 2015?
Well, I think we've said a lot about it, and I think we'll be reminded about it, Vice Mayor.
I don't know if we're making a motion or not, so I just want to make sure it's in there if we are.
No.
I think we're trying to restrict motion.
Yeah. Well, again, that's my suggestion, that we direct staff to look at interim, the potential for interim locations for stop signs. Also to look at, the problems that we may create by doing that, because I think that that's very real. And it can be, we can even reference Louisiana Street for improvements, or that we, once 31st Street is open, and give it, at least some time to be able to measure those traffic counts as they change, because they're going to change. But understand those. I think that we're going to be looking at Carroll's neighborhood and Park Hill. I think there's any number of things that are about to happen.
Are we all? No, it's closed, I'm sorry. All right, are we okay with that direction?
Sure. Yeah. What about the sidewalks?
Oh, and
We're gonna go
include
ahead.
the gaps.
Okay.
Is
So we'll have a
this-
plan for the stop signs and the sidewalks.
Yeah, we
Okay.
got to come up with a funding mechanism to
Right.
take care of the sidewalks. I can't say this enough, that the stop signs, if they happen, are an interim deal.
Well, I hope this time between now and when we talk about it again is short.
Yeah.
And Mayor, to clarify, so you would want us also to bring back a report, an evaluation, once 31st is open, and continue to look at this at that point? We can certainly do all that.
You know, the direction for staff?
So it needs to come back here?
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I don't know how long, Mark, Chuck, couple weeks?
Bring it back for the recommendation. Yeah, it's gonna have to be a couple weeks so we can take a look at it. I mean, I think the commission's been discussing all the right issues. I think interimly, Commissioner Amix, we can do stuff like that. I mean, we've got the authority, we can put them out for 30, 60, 90 days. When 31st Street opens back up, we're gonna have to give it some time to get back to normal. Then we need to reevaluate it. Do we reevaluate with the temporary signs in or out? That's gonna be a debate. We probably just wanna take them out and see what's going on. Sidewalk gap, what do you wanna do with the Naismith Trail? Do you wanna look at us getting that done yet this summer so you can have
The raised.
a raised crossing with the, the
Yeah.
pedestrian hybrid beacon at some point?
Yeah. I want
They're
that.
not cheap, but
Yeah.
they do seem to work. We've got them on Burroughs Trail, it seems to work. So that would be, those would be the things we could work on. Now, the other thing is, while we're putting that sidewalk in along 27th Street, construction activity is going to have it close one lane during, while we're putting it in. And we will attempt to get that in this summer. So that will, just because of the construction activity, kind of slow down traffic and kind of, reduce traffic. So
Yeah.
we want to think about that too, because it's not a small length of project. They'll be off to the side and stuff.
And how long would it take to build something like this?
So what's it, about 1,200 feet?
The camp is about 2,500 feet.
2,500 feet.
And we're currently have a project that we're working to bid out for the gap, so
Yeah, we'll
we
have
have to
to,
coordinate with all the property owners and
yeah.
driveway access and those types of things.
Stuff.
So
It'll be close to when school's opening up at this point. I mean, we're already at the end of May. You've only got about 90 days.
I just mentioned to the mayor, one of the things that concerns me a little bit, if we shut 27th Street down while 31st Street's not open.
Oh, boy.
It won't be shut.
Well, half of it.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean, we can wait till 31st Street's open,
Is
but
that in July?
end of July or August, It all depends, but, and start on it then, but then you don't have it available for school.
I think that would help push traffic off of 27th Street. I wouldn't want to personally wait for a sidewalk. Risk it.
Okay, so,
It would be more like a chicane, Commissioner Amix, because
Yeah,
it wouldn't be the whole 2,500 feet that we would have closed. It would be 100 feet at a time while they're working.
okay.
Pull a
Well,
truck in, pull a,
Let's look at the coordination of this, because one of the things that we don't want to do, we still got to get kids to school. You know, if we overrun the time, and I mean, there's got to be kids that go east, so.
oh yeah, we'd have to have it done before school is back.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, okay. We'll talk about that, okay.
So give us a couple weeks to bring something back.
Okay,
26th,
26th.
May 26th.
Okay.
You maybe do the east leg of the sidewalk first.
Okay.
I mean,
By Naismith?
well, I mean, the
Oh, that's
Bellhaven. I mean,
East, yes, by
yeah,
Bellhaven.
I mean, that seems to me to be one of the priorities right there.
What I might suggest, Commissioners, is that we, when we bring this back in front of you on the 26th, that we include that kind of a proposal in
Yeah,
terms of
okay.
phasing.
With a timeline and-
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That sort of thing. Okay. All right. Do we need a motion to defer this item?
No, I would make a motion that we direct staff to make recommendations at this point on some interim stop sign locations along 27th Street. Also to have staff look at what things may be complicated in the neighborhood because of those stop signs and make additional recommendations from there. Also that to direct staff to begin temporary planning or whatever we need to do on the sidewalk gaps. Also, what else do we want to do on Haskell, or Louisiana Street?
It's kind of separate from this, but
Yeah, it is. Let's worry about 27th at this point to get those.
We want
back.
to talk about the beacon though, too, right?
We do want to talk about the elevated crosswalk and the potential for a beacon there also. What other direction do you need?
I just want to mention, the issue on Louisiana, we were going to bring that back when we bring back the bids in the next couple weeks. So
Okay.
we'll bring that back and we'll tell you what that cost is based on those bids. Our thought is to bring it in as a change order, so we'll have that information for you in a couple weeks.
Okay, that's good. So is
So
that
you
an
made that long motion.
Is that it?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Second.
Okay.
So what he said, what he seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? What did we just do? All right. Motion carries.
We captured it.
Hopefully,
We'll
we're
bring it
going to
back on
make
the
some
26th.
positive recommendations and changes.
Next item on the agenda is the city auditor presenting the April 2015 audit recommendation.
did you want to take a little break?
Thank you all very much. Thank you all for your comments. Yeah, I do.
Okay, we're
Wanna
gonna take
little
a
break,
5-minute
please?
break.
Sorry, Michael.
And then we'll be right back with you. You all ready? You good? You get some food?
Yeah, thank you.
I knew that.
All right, we will reconvene here. And with the next item on the agenda being the city auditor presenting the April 2015 audit recommendation. Michael, good evening.
Good evening. Mike Iglinski, City Auditor. Tonight I'm presenting the information on the status of recommendations that I've made in the past. So the idea of the follow-up is to provide both the public and the City Commission with information about the steps the city has taken to implement recommendations. It's also required by the City Code. So the way this works, I request from the City Manager's office an update on any recommendation that is open, and I keep a database that tracks all the recommendations. So I take the information that City Manager's office provides and sort of characterize the status. In general, the status will be either implemented or in progress. If a recommendation has been implemented, I ask that you guys consider closing it, and if it's closed, then I don't include it in future follow-ups. So I thought what I'd do is just quickly summarize the recommendations that have been implemented as of this report. There are a total of 8 of them. The management determined that purchasing leased streetlights from the utility company would not be beneficial, and that implements the recommendation to evaluate the feasibility of purchasing the streetlights. The follow-up report itself also includes a little bit of background information on that issue, as well as I updated some analysis on the cost of street lighting. That's on page 4 of the memo if you have it. And the main takeaway from that graph is that the costs of street lighting have continued to increase. It's about $653,000 in 2014. Those increases are quite a bit sharper than most other costs, for example, cost of inflation. One thing the city manager has indicated is that the city is going to provide testimony to the Kansas Corporation Commission, which regulates utility rates. And that wasn't a formal recommendation of the audit, although it was an interim recommendation of the initial audit. And so I think that is a good idea and is kind of implementing a recommendation. There were 4 recommendations related to the rental housing program. The city has implemented all of them. Those were about documenting policies and procedures, creating and reporting performance measures, adjusting fees as appropriate to better recover program costs. And there was a kind of technical issue where a certain number of properties were exempted, kind of an unintentional consequence of a code change. That was addressed with the changes in the program. But all 4 of those are implemented, and I promised Scott I would say something good about that, so thank you, Scott. I think that may be actually among the quicker times for all of the recommendations of a project to be closed. I had a recommendation that is also implemented that was about providing the City Commission with a report on the status of the city's program for retiree health care, and that was done last summer, or maybe June or July last year. And finally, there were 2 recommendations related to the infrastructure at Rock Chalk Park that were implemented. One of those was to collect a payment from the developer that hadn't been collected, and the other was to prepare a final report at the end of construction and provide that to the commission. So I'm going to ask that you all consider closing those 8 recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions or discuss anything else.
We have questions for Michael. Okay. Thank you.
So shall I close them all, or?
We will take some public comment first, and then we will.
Oh, yes, okay. I was afraid someone was coming up right at the time.
Do you have any public comment on this item? All right, bring it back to the commission. I would entertain a motion to close these 8 items.
So moved. Michael's doing a great job.
Yeah, I agree.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded to close these 8 items by Vice Mayor Soden, seconded by Commissioner Boley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for waiting around tonight.
Next item on the agenda is to consider authorizing staff to submit a fiscal year 2018 geometric improvement application for the reconstruction of the 23rd Street and Haskell Avenue intersection. David, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Dave Cronin, City Engineer, Public Works Department. Each year, KDOT sets aside funds for a geometric improvement program that they receive applications on from communities that address turn lanes and other capacity improvements at intersections on state highways that are within the city limits, or city connecting links as they're otherwise known as. And in Lawrence, that includes 6th Street from Massachusetts down to Iowa. 6th Street west of Iowa is being turned back to the state as part of another agreement. But Iowa in Lawrence, North 2nd Street, and 23rd Street, which is K10. And so KDOT has a program to receive applications, and they have a maximum state participation in $1 million. The cost ratio funding is depending on the city's population. For Lawrence, it's an 80-20 split, 80% state funds and 20% local match. We have been successful in receiving funds from this program in the past. The most recent example is $500,000 that we used for the 23rd Iowa project last year. We had applied for those back in 2011. So it's a very competitive program. The past couple of years, we've applied for funds at 23rd and Haskell, and that is the intersection that we are proposing to submit the application for this year. As most folks know, 23rd Street will be turned back to the city from the state off the state highway system after the South Lawrence Trafficway is complete, which is still scheduled for the end of 2016. That will involve a city-state agreement, and with that agreement, we will likely discuss receiving some funds from KDOT to make improvements on 23rd Street before that gets turned back to the city for maintenance in the future. We know there's a stormwater issue at 23rd and Osdale that'll be part of the discussion, as well as concerns with the condition of East 23rd Street, particularly east of the Haskell Bridge that was reconstructed a couple of years ago to the east city limits. That's about a mile of street, and it's in bad shape from a pavement perspective. It has some failures, and we're out there doing maintenance on that street. So with that in mind, and the fact that 23rd Street in the future won't be eligible for geometric improvement funds, and the fact that this could be a good opportunity for KDOT to start making some improvements on that stretch of 23rd Street by redoing this intersection at 23rd and Haskell. We feel that it would be a good project to submit an application for. The scope of the project would include reconstructing all of the pavement with concrete, adding a eastbound and westbound dedicated right turn lane, which would also help facilitate the bus turnout. There's a bus stop right now on 23rd Street on eastbound and westbound at the intersection. So it's an opportunity to get the bus out of a through lane of traffic or into the shared bus turnout / dedicated right turn lane. So that would be something we would look at with a project, and new traffic signals as well. With the completion of the South Lawrence Trafficway in the end of 2016, there's going to be an interchange south down at Haskell, and we anticipate additional traffic that could be using this intersection in the future. And I think it would be a good opportunity to make improvements if we can get some funds from KDOT to do that. And so we've done a very preliminary cost estimate for these improvements. It's about $1.76 million. That would max out the $1 million in state funds that the KDOT would participate in, and the city would be responsible for the balance of the funding, which would be approximately $760,000. I mean, it's just a preliminary estimate at this time. If we were successful in receiving these funds or being selected, we would then bring this back to you to decide on how to pursue as far as design plans or the scope of the project. We'll still have the ability to not pursue the project in the future if the City Commission chooses to not fund the city portion for construction. So that's still an opportunity in the future to discuss. So at this time, we're just seeking authorization to submit the application for this intersection. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Okay, yes, sir.
David, you talked about increased traffic on Haskell Avenue because of the interchange south at Haskell and the SLT. Do we have any idea what the traffic just north of 23rd is anticipated to be on Haskell?
We don't have any projected traffic counts for after the South Orange Trafficway opens. We get that question a lot all around the community.
The reason that I bring it up is because on Bob Billings, you know, there was a lot of discussion early on during design and everything else, what the increased traffic was anticipated to be on Bob Billings once that interchange was open. We don't have anything right now that tells what the traffic north of 23rd, the north of 23rd on Haskell is going to be.
I do not. I don't have that information. If KDOT.
Best guess?
Huh?
Best guess? No.
Best guess. You know, traffic patterns will change around the community, I think, significantly after the South Orange Trafficway opens, and a lot of traffic will be bypassing 23rd Street. But there will be an interchange south on Haskell, and that will be a node for folks to get down, to get to the SLT, K10 Highway, and that could involve 23rd and Haskell. I don't know if it would increase north of Haskell. I think it would be pretty similar, but a lot of that's kind of we'll see how that transpires in the future, but I wouldn't anticipate a large jump north of 23rd Street after the bypass opens.
All I'm thinking is that 31st and the SLT can't carry all the traffic in and around town, so I know that it's got to be going somewhere. This is a good idea. I mean, that intersection is going to need improvements, and I think that we really need to be aware that there is going to be a traffic increase north of 23rd on Haskell. My gut feeling is it's got to go somewhere, and not all of it's going to turn on 23rd once it gets off. So anyway.
Other questions for Dave? Dave, I have two. Complete streets, rebuild 23rd and Haskell. It wasn't referenced. You just said ADA compliant sidewalks. Will we build that out like 6th and Iowa, 23rd and Iowa, that sort of thing?
Yeah, the sidewalk ramps currently, I don't think they all meet ADA compliance with cross slope and they're broken and bad shape. And so we would reconstruct the sidewalks, make sure they meet ADA compliance.
Okay. And the second question I had, in the draft CIP in 2018 and 19, there's East 23rd Street Phase 1 and East 23rd Street Phase 2. Where would this fall into that?
That's a good question. We have kind of outlaid that in the future, identified the need to reconstruct 23rd Street. That would really ultimately depend on any funding we get from KDOT as part of the future turnback agreement. If KDOT, if they're willing to give us $5 million to reconstruct that street, that would free up that money that we set aside for the 2018, 2019 in the general obligation bond area for that $5 million. So doing this project with the geometric improvement would help either the state or the city reduce costs for the future reconstruction of 23rd Street east of the bridge, because that section would be done. We'd likely be able to get more state funds by doing it with this project than using city funds in the future. So it's in the same corridor, it's just an intersection, but it's in that East 23rd Street corridor from east of the Haskell Bridge to the East City limits. So it's just a piece of that stretch. So it starts getting at, essentially, probably to answer your question, reducing that construction cost in 2018 or 2019 from a city funding perspective.
Okay. Any questions for Dave? All right, Dave, thank you. Public comment on this item?
Good evening, my name's Katie Welsh. I just had a question. How soon will we know whether we'll have a city-state agreement about the give back? Or, because that's a lot of money, it'd be lovely to know if that was coming.
All right.
We're anticipating beginning those discussions here relatively soon. We met, city staff met with Jerry Younger, state transportation engineer, about a month ago, just kind of just on overall community discussion on the 6th Street turnback agreement status, and kind of started the very preliminary discussion about, you know, we're getting ready to open the South Orange Trafficway. We need to start thinking about meeting to come to start those discussions. So I would anticipate towards the end of this year, going into 2016, to those discussions and things to start taking shape. And then with the completion of the SLT, which we're still on schedule for the end of 2016, that doesn't necessarily mean that day 23rd Street gets turned back to the city, but that will really accelerate the finalizing of the agreement. And so I would anticipate in the time frame of next year that starts to take shape, and that we kind of come to start to understand how much participation the state would be willing to set aside for making future improvements.
Does that answer your question? Excellent. All right. If there's no other comment, then I would entertain a motion to authorize staff to submit a fiscal year 2018 geometric improvement application for the reconstruction of 23rd and Haskell.
Moved.
Did you second? Okay. Motion made by Commissioner Amix, seconded by Commissioner Herbert. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Last item on the regular agenda is to consider a motion to recess into executive session for approximately 1 hour for the purpose of consultation with attorneys for the city deemed privilege and the attorney-client relationship. The justification for this executive session is to keep attorney-client matters confidential at this time. City Commission will resume its regular meeting in the Commission room immediately following the executive session. I would entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
All right. All right. Motion made by Commissioner Boley, seconded by Vice Mayor Soden. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We're in executive session for an hour.